Hello, this is Paul McGann.
And this is Jake McGann.
And you're listening to
Traveling the Vortex.
Ding dong.
We've joined the Doctor as he travels the Vortex and landed at episode number 75. And for this epiversary, we go back to school with book reports. I'm Keith.
I'm Shaun.
I'm Glenn.
I'll say it. I liked it.
Thank you.
I mouthed it. I liked it.
Happy epiversary.
Happy epiversary.
Happy epiversary. Happy epiversary. Happy epiversary. Happy epiversary. Happy epiversary.
Glenn's in a musical mood.
I am in a musical mood. How was you guys this week?
Not too bad. Aside from having to work the morning show again on Friday morning.
I stayed late and learned how to do the morning show.
Yeah, so hopefully next time you can do the morning show.
It won't be a last minute thing though. You'll have to get called on those last minute sick.
Well, last minute at 9 o'clock in the morning the day before.
I'm still unemployed.
Right. So. That's still last minute, trust me.
But Sarah and I watched The Adventures of Tintin last night.
How was it?
Co-written by Stephen Moffat. It was really enjoyable. I don't know if I'd own it, but I'm really glad I watched it. The graphics, the animation is amazing. There were times where it looked realistic, like it was actually shot. Other times, not so much. But it was a really fun throwback story. I mean, it felt like it felt more like Indiana Jones and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull did, and I liked Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Yeah. So
it's an animated Indiana Jones.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I didn't realize this until the other day. I'd read, and of course this makes sense because it's an animated film, and those were worked on for many, many years. But Moffat wrote that script before he was even script showrunner.
I wondered why there wasn't any interviews with him on the bonus features. And he had to walk away from it
because he actually was signed to do 2 more scripts.
Oh, yeah.
And he wrote the first one, and then he got the offer to do Doctor Who, and he had to go to Steven Spielberg and say, I can't do these other 2. And they said, okay, we understand. He said, I've got this big opportunity to do Doctor Who, and I want to do it. And they said, yeah, we understand.
So.
And they let him out.
Stephen, of course, being a Doctor Who fan, said,
they let him out of the contract.
How long ago was that for Edgar Wright?
I don't know.
Obviously, it was a big enough. He was prominent enough to land that gig.
What did he do? What did he have to do with it?
He co-wrote it.
He
was one of the 3 co-writers.
Well, I wonder if it was one of those things where
he came back in and touched
Moffat
up.
probably wrote the majority of the script. When he realized he was leaving, they decided they better have Wright come in and maybe do some rewrites because Edgar Wright will probably do maybe the next 2. I don't know. Maybe he's.
I don't know. Here's the disappointing thing from my standpoint. I loved the movie, fantastic. As originally released in theaters, it's The Adventures of Tintin: Secret of the Unicorn.
You realize we've talked about this on the show, yeah?
I don't think we talked about it on the show.
Yeah.
Oh, well, then never
mind.
Go
ahead.
They took the subtitle off, so there probably won't be a 2 and a 3.
Right.
Now, and it's yet another animated feature that a certain somebody probably should have got nominated for.
I think they will.
Yeah.
I think they will do
I think
2
they
and
all
3
did a
because
really good job.
It was successful enough. I don't think it did the numbers they wanted, but it was
overseas. It was huge.
But I mean, Tintin is an institution over in Europe. I mean, there was an interview with one of the supporting, very small, almost cameo roles, and he was off doing promotions for another movie, and all anybody wanted to ask him about was Tintin.
It's not even a UK institution. It's like Danish or
it's
something.
French. It's from a French comic.
Yeah, it's a French comic.
But over in Europe, everywhere in Europe, it's huge.
Peter Jackson's supposed to direct the second one with Spielberg producing if it gets made.
Did you watch? How much of the bonus features did you watch?
A good chunk of it.
Did you see the beginning? The journey to Tintin?
Yes. Where he sent the video
with
himself.
Spielberg originally wanted to do it live action and contacted Peter Jackson about putting in a CGI dog. And Peter Jackson dressed up as the captain guy in the blue sweater and he was originally going to be that character if it was live action.
He could pull it off look-wise. I don't know about acting-wise.
He dressed up, did the whole bit, and then he was the test subject in the footage with this animated Snowy is the name of the dog in the movie. And so it was him in the test footage, and then Spielberg's marveling at, wow, this dog looks real. It's fantastic. It's
that
this,
test
it's
footage
that.
was some of the best test footage I've ever seen.
Oh yeah, it was an amazing
It
computer
put
animated
Scooby
dog.
Doo, any of the even the most recent like Smurfs or Alvin and Chipmunks. All of that human and CGI puts it to shame.
And it's just test footage. But then at the end of the test footage, he turns toward the camera, and Spielberg went, "Oh, wait a minute, that's Peter." And he's like, "Please, let me be involved with making this movie with you. I've got to be a part of this. I've had Tintin since I was 4." And,
That's cool.
it was fairly awesome. So
Well, he's from Australia, too, right?
Yes.
Peter Jackson?
Peter Jackson is,
So it must be huge
is he
there,
Australian
too.
or New Zealand officially?
one of
Well,
the two, yeah.
He's from the
He's from
Australian
that
area.
Yeah.
How
Very
about you
good.
guys?
I have a new obsession.
Yeah. And
Got him hooked.
And he's dragged me in.
He tried to get me, but it was too. If you guys didn't go at 10 o'clock in the morning, I would go play.
We live in Kansas. You have to go before it gets hot.
Wouldn't go at 10 o'clock in the morning. That's not early, Keith.
It is for
Wait till
me.
you get a real job, man. You're going to be really
Once-
hard. Or have kids, man.
Once I get a job with
When you
normal
have
hours,
kids,
or if when I have
wow.
kids, then I'll get up early.
10 o'clock is not.
I'm gonna sleep in
10
while I
o'clock
can.
is not early.
Okay, wait. You're going to sleep in while
Actually,
you
we
can.
ended up going.
But
We ended up going at 11.
How late
So-
were you up?
Well, that too.
Uh-huh. You could have gone to bed at 3 with the rest of us after Friday Night Who, but no, you decided to stay
No,
up
you
even
guys
later.
went to bed at like 1:30, 2
Yeah, we did.
o'clock.
I
I
was
stayed
bullish.
up and fought with my phone.
That's true.
Should I
You
tell
had-
that saga?
You had phone
What happened
issues.
to your phone?
I got a text from AT&T saying, "Hey, you can upgrade to gingerbread," which is
You can upgrade to gingerbread?
That's
your operating system.
Yeah, my operating
Oh, okay.
system. I have an
all,
Android.
All the Androids are confectionery based.
It's
operating
not an
systems.
Android brand phone, like physically, but it runs on Android
Runs
operating
Android
system.
OS, yeah.
So I upgrade. I back up with the software that my phone tells me to do, because I had to go through their website in order to get the OS. And when I go to restore everything, my contacts won't restore. Even though it says it's there in the software, it won't restore. So I'm fighting with this all night, grumpy through most of 11th hour. And I stay up and fight with it more. And I get up the next morning and just, well, let me try this. Because the weird thing is, sometimes my texts, when I imported those, instead of just a number, it would show up as a name that they were saved to. So I knew something wasn't working properly. I get up, and I swear I looked at it before, tried to do it, and wouldn't let me. All my contacts were saved to my SIM card. And I was able to transfer it Saturday morning. But for some reason, Friday night, even though when I tried to, it didn't.
Oh, my darn.
Yeah, he was a grumpy bear.
Yeah, I was a grumpy bear for the 11th hour.
Well, I'm
Anyways,
sorry I missed it. I was very tired that night. So.
continue with the disc golf talk.
Yeah, we're
playing disc golf
We're playing
now.
disc golf, and we've been bitten pretty hard and already spent some money.
That's the other thing holding
discs.
me back.
You could just buy a couple discs, so you don't even have to have
That's
a bag
true.
or anything. The discs are relatively expensive. I bought one today, another one today already at Walmart for $12. So it's not too
Did you
bad.
get a Wraith?
No, I got the. This one's the. Oh shoot! What is it? Starfire.
Starfire.
It's a driver, distance driver.
I bought a Wraith
Because I had that
at
beast
Walmart.
that I didn't like. So
And, well, we didn't buy the Beast because Mel's like, no. Glenn said he didn't like the Beast. So
Oh,
we're
I
like, okay,
didn't
stay away
like-
from
don't
that.
like
So,
the Beast.
so I bought a Wraith and just went and gave it a few test throws. So far, I'm not impressed with it. For being such a quote-unquote higher quality than the El Cheapo Comet and, other things that came in my starter kit, I like my starter kit a lot more than I like the quote-unquote real discs. So, but yeah, that's kind of what we did. We've been,
I played before. I
I'm hit
enjoyed it.
hard. I really
don't
enjoyed
own
it.
the discs.
well, we went out to Lake Shawnee and played 18 holes. Well, yeah, we played 18.
We played 18.
didn't
We played
play
full 18.
I saw the picture.
We had to play. We had a dummy in 18 hole because none of us want to throw our discs across the lake. But
Oh,
but we went out and
There's a
played.
water hazard.
Yeah, big one. And so we
do
played
they at
18
least
in. and
provide
then-
a boat so you can
No,
paddle
they
to?
don't. It's not even close to the paddle boats either, which I'd be a little more tempted to do.
Well, and
How deep is it in that area?
I wouldn't
the
want to
lake.
swim across it.
Yeah.
Oh,
you
so it's like
could swim across.
I didn't know if it was just like a
Well,
little
it's
an inlet, but
It's a cove, or an inlet, but it's
So it's deeper than knee deep.
it's probably I would guess there's probably 4 or 5 feet there.
At least.
It's deeper than the water hazard at Sports Center.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. Most definitely. Not to mention the Sports Center, if I plop a ball in there, I've only lost 90-some cents. If I plop a disc in there, I've lost a $15 disc.
Yeah, and let's be honest, I don't swim in the lake. It smells like fish. It's just not happening. But we joked. We said we ought to get a boat and go trawling for all those lost discs.
I wonder if they float.
No.
They do.
No.
They do.
You don't think so?
No.
I would
think so.
You know how
I know? Because I got a video with my with my starter set, and they were talking about how they're designed to float because there's so many water hazards.
Maybe some of the higher quality ones float. I also have evidence that they don't. But the guy, we stopped in at, okay, after we left you, we went and we stopped at Dairy Queen and got an Orange Julius. So it was a perfect day because it was like beautiful and nice outside, and we played disc golf, and then I had an Orange Julius. It was like, it doesn't get any better than this.
You went from Lake Shawnee all the way to North Topeka
no,
just for an Orange Julius?
Dairy Queen on East Side has them now, too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
So then we stopped at CD Trade Post on Minnesota, and we're walking around in there, and this guy was talking. I'd made the offhand comment to the clerk that we just got done playing disc golf, and somebody in there was like, "Oh, did you go to the lake?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah." Well, he's been playing for like 16 years, and so we got to talking about this and how we made up our own hole 18. He goes, "Yeah, I don't play 18 because it gets over the water." And he says, "I've thrown, I don't know, I've been playing for 15 years, and I think I've thrown thousands of dollars worth of discs in that lake, and I just don't do it anymore." Well, we made the comment to him that, we were talking about troweling them up and doing these discs. And he goes, "Oh, the disc Nazis do that." I'm like, "There are disc Nazis?" He goes, "Yeah, these people go, apparently, that's their thing. They go out in a boat, and they dredge up all these discs that wound up in the lake, and then they sell them back to people for like $2 or $3 a disc."
Oh, man. Probably call the phone number, that's all. And say, hey, I got your disc.
So... But yeah, we had fun with that.
So what I should do is contact the disc Nazi and try to buy some of the ones that other people didn't want to buy back because they already replaced them.
You should find a disc scalper. Yo, man, I got golf discs right here, man.
Only a little bit of mud.
$3. So yeah, we had fun.
Some mud and some discoloration. So anyway, today I caught the bug so bad that today when I took my daughter out, we played 9, 10, 11. We played 11 holes. I think I said 12 to you guys, but we played 11 holes at the other course over at Crestview because Caitlin, I just wanted to go out and throw some discs around and practice a little bit. I asked Caitlin if she wanted to play. She wanted to go out there and throw some discs with me, and she said, yeah, okay. So when we were at Walmart, and we saw this little, generic starter set for like $8, and I was like, all right. For $8, I could take her to a movie, or I could buy her some discs, and she could have her own set. Maybe she'll enjoy it. What the heck? We bought her discs. She went home. She has a messenger bag. She took her messenger bag, put a bottle of water in it. We went out, started playing. She said, I like this. This is really cool. So we were totally stoked. So we get to we're only going to play 9 holes. We get to the 9th hole. And she goes, can we play some more? I said, sure, we'll do the back 9. So we started doing it. And then by the time we got done with the 11th, she says, I'm kind of getting tired. And I said, yeah, I'm a little tired too. We could quit now. So because we had only set out to do 9 anyway. So, but she said, yeah, I definitely want to do that again. So I got her hooked as well. So that's kind of a nice father-daughter thing to do.
Yeah, that is.
Of course, we spent so long playing disc golf that I didn't get a chance to go buy my bike because that's the other thing I was going to do this weekend was buy a bike so Caitlin and I can go biking. And I didn't do that, so we'll have to wait until next weekend.
Come, Keith, join us. Join us.
Yeah, because Shaun's buying a bike too, although he hasn't bought his yet, right?
I have a bike.
You did buy it?
No, I haven't bought it yet. I have gift certificates.
You have a bike?
I have a bike. I just need to get it from my mom's.
Oh, well, there you go.
But we've established you have a...
I have a mountain bike that
you have a venture bike.
has lasted
that's
me
right. He did say that last
for
week.
years that I've ridden from 10th and Buchanan to 46th and Gage and back and haven't had a problem.
What bike is it? Oh, what
You rode your
brand
bike
is
to
it,
work? Really?
No. That was for fun.
Before you worked there?
No, 46th and Gage.
That's that way, down Gage.
Yeah.
Blackburn.
We
Nursery.
worked the other direction. Across the river.
Right, but you do know that the numbers on the other side of the river go north. They get bigger.
46th and Southwest Gage.
Yeah, but Gage only goes to Silver Lake Road, so that's only
75.
That's 17.
That's still Gage.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
It's
not.
Gage on 17th Street. So.
Anyway, so
No
Once
gauge.
again,
There's actually,
nobody
you realize
listening
there-
cares
you
about the
realize there's
geography
a-
of Topeka.
You realize there's actually a gauge on the other side.
No, I do understand that. Yeah,
Okay.
It's called 75.
No.
No.
The General Mail facility is on the
Yes,
other side
I've
of the
been on
river.
the- I've
That's
been on the other
gauge.
side of the river.
But it ends at
Yeah, at Silver
17th
Lake
Street, which is
Is it
Lower Silver
17th?
Lake Road. It's
The
17th Street
Silver Lake
there,
Road.
but it's Lower Silver Lake Road, yeah.
Not to be confused with Upper Silver Lake Road.
I've always wondered about that. It's not like there is an upper.
There is no Upper Silver Lake Road.
Anyway, yeah, so that's what we did this weekend. All right, let's
It's like
talk
the
about some news.
Lone Pine Mall. Really?
One Pine.
One Pine.
There's some new guests
Some
announced
guests.
for Galley,
The first round of guests.
which we're all going to this year. All of us.
Hopefully.
Keith still has the hopefully.
I still have the hopefully. Because, yeah.
You're coming to sleep on the floor, right?
Yeah, I'm going to sleep.
Because you
on
could have had a bed.
I could still have a room.
Although at this point, I'm a bit more tempted to go to Chicago with their guests than Galley.
right now, I'm
Just
a little
based
more
off their
tempted
guests.
to, yeah, because I know who their doctor
we didn't
is.
talk about the guests for Chicago.
We did.
I thought we did.
Yeah, we
No,
did. We
did we?
mentioned.
We
Yeah,
mentioned
because
it.
we were
Oh, okay.
talking about we could make it a day trip, and
I can
Phil
never.
chimed in and said
oh yeah,
that
that's
we could
right.
come stay with him.
That's right.
We'd had a place to stay.
Well, for those that don't remember, it's Sylvester McCoy and Sophie Aldred.
And for everybody listening, Dr. Phil said we could stay with him. So come on down.
Come on, we're bringing everybody.
Phil, I invited some people.
Hope that's okay.
But, well, to be fair, we have to clear it with Mrs.
Right.
Dr. Phil.
Yeah.
Mrs. Dr. Phil. We'll have to say it's okay.
She should be the one to talk to. But I understand
Well-
if you send flowers, that probably goes over well.
Oh, okay.
I read that in a book.
Flowers.com. Okay.
An
For,
FTD. What is
should
it?
totally do that.
FTD bouquet.
We should
FTD?
totally send an
FTD
FTD bouquet to Dr. Phil's wife.
There you go. Then
We could get it on our good
As
side.
many people want to stay.
I'm just talking for us for right now.
Oh. I think Phil already cleared it with the wife. I
Well,
got that
I think he's
impression
going
from
to
his
clear it with
tweet.
the
I think,
wife.
yeah, I think he's going to.
Oh, he's going to. Oh, okay.
If we say, "Hey, we definitely are going,"
Then he would
Then
clear
he
it
would
then.
try
No,
to
I
clear
get
Then
it.
he would clear
All
it.
right.
But I think we should butter her up with an FTD.
Who's coming to Galley?
Philip Hinchcliffe.
Da-da-da.
Shaun, who's Philip Hinchcliffe?
He was a bigwig back in the day. He oversaw Doctor Who for, what did we determine, 3 seasons?
Yes,
From-
Tom Baker's first three
From the-
seasons.
Yeah, for Tom Baker's first 3 seasons. So from Robot all the way up to Deadly Assassin somewhere-ish.
Probably longer than that. Hinchcliffe was in the. Hinchcliffe was also in the Lely
Lely
years
years.
with the. In fact, Hinchcliffe was the kind of the. If I'm remembering this right, he was kind of the reason why we got the Hammer horror film style.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Hinchcliffian horror,
Yeah,
as they call it.
Hinchcliffian horror. So he was in the Lely years as well, which were the Brain of Morbius. Well, that was obviously Sarah Jane, but Horror Fang Rock I think was still a Hinchcliffe at that time. It wasn't.
Nope.
Who was it?
Patty Russell?
Oh, it was Patty Russell. No, Patty Russell was a director.
But Hinchcliffe did produce Talons of Wen-Chiang.
Okay,
Yeah, that's
all right,
what he
so
was
it's
up to.
there. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, it's up to there.
So, must be
Patty Russell was a producer for a while.
Well,
So was she between Hinchcliffe and J&T? I thought Patty Russell was director.
It says produced by Patty Russell.
Oh, I'll be darned.
Oh,
okay.
no, it doesn't. It's directed.
Yeah, I
It's by
was gonna
Graham
say-
Williams.
Oh, Graham Williams. That's
Graham
right.
Williams,
Yeah,
yes.
Graham Williams was in there. I was going to say, Patty Russell. I remember her being a director.
I read it wrong, my bad.
All right. Good. I said, wow, that's kind
And
of
at any rate, Hinchcliffe's going to be there.
Who else?
Mark Strickson,
Who played?
Turlo,
Turlo.
Peter Purves,
Purvis.
I like Purves better.
Pervs. If you like pervs, that's your prerogative, Keith.
Purvis, who played Stephen Taylor.
That was from the Hartnell years. Yep.
Yes, the only one we've watched is The Time Meddler.
Yeah, that's the only Purvis we've seen, which there's not a lot out there, though.
Yeah.
So not a lot of choices.
Nicholas Pegg, who was not there last year, who is a Dalek operator and also a writer.
Yeah.
Nicholas Briggs returns.
No.
Of course, the voice of the Daleks,
And
as
also,
well as Cybermen. And
he produces Big Finish audio.
He's a heck of a nice guy.
Friend of the show, Nicholas
Friend of
Briggs?
the show, Nicholas
Not
Briggs.
yet.
Lisa Bowerman, a.k.a.
Sister to Jack Bauman.
John.
Or John Jack. Well, it could be Jack too, but John Bowerman. Yeah.
It
That's his
really?
sister.
I did not know
yeah.
that.
Oh, wow.
And she's also Bernie Summerfield.
Yes. From Big
She's
Finish.
like Bernice.
Bernice.
They call her Bernie in the show.
Gary Russell, a writer, script editor,
Yep.
which he script edited a lot, but hasn't written a lot of proper Doctor Who. He's done a lot
He's
of
written a lot of proper.
he's done a lot of Big Finish
He's
and
done
a
the
lot of
informal
novels.
stuff, but not the proper.
The very informal stuff.
For those that consider television only canon, he's only been script editor for.
Yes.
Because Shaun and I were looking this up.
But he did a lot of Sarah Jane Adventures, which is where we cued into his name from.
Correct.
Script edited those too.
Script edited.
Yeah. Jason High Ellery from Big Finish, Tony Lee, Doctor Who comics writer, and Charlie Ross, a comedian and entertainer.
Very good. Very good.
That's just the first batch. Obviously,
Yeah,
more names
and
to
then a
come.
lot of more names will come out between now and next February.
I
So
wonder
we got a
how
lot of
hard
time.
they're working to get a Peter Davidson appearance. Sit with Turlough there.
Trying to get him back,
Why not?
I guess.
It's the Big 50. I'm sure they're going to try to get as many doctors as possible.
I'm wondering if, they will try. I mean, part of me wonders if McCoy's Chicago TARDIS appearance, even though they try not to do the same guests. Part of me wonders if they figure Sylvester's going to be here in November, maybe they could get him back here in February and have Sylvester there.
Although I would think it would be a little harder 3 months later to get someone to come back.
Yeah, that's true. You know what
I don't know. Paul McGann made the circuit because he did Galley, and then he went out to Icon, and then he showed up somewhere else.
But Icon was
that
only a month.
Yeah,
less
that was
than a
almost
month later.
back to back.
Yeah, I mean, they were close.
So we're talking 4 months. So,
Yeah.
between Chicago
And
TARDIS
he only did that also because
But
McCoy had to drop out.
My point is, he's done shooting.
Is he done yet?
He's done with The Hobbit, so his
well,
parts of
obviously
The
he's
Hobbit.
going to be done by November.
Radigan the Brown.
Radagast.
Radagast the Brown. Radigan. got Radigan from the Great Mouse Detective. Excuse me. Radagast the Brown.
Why were you hired? Because I can pronounce Radagast the Brown.
But he now has that out of the way, so he's got a little more time on his hands. So.
That's true.
The other nice thing is
The big coup would be to get Tom. That would be
Or
I read
a new
somewhere-
series Doctor. Eccleston or Tennant, I think, would be huge.
Eccleston, I don't think would do it.
I don't think he would either, but if they could get it.
If they could get him, yeah, it'd be huge.
Tennant, he's so busy right now. But
Well,
he's
huge.
He's done stuff with.
He's going to Comic-Con.
He's done stuff with Peter
but he's
Davison
there specifically
taped
promoting
for Galley,
other
so.
things.
Yeah, and
For
Comic-Con's a
he
little
was there for
different
Doctor
because
Who. He was there for Fright Night.
Comic-Con is different because the studios get involved with Comic-Con because
I
it's
suppose
really
that's true.
become a big
Because it's hardly
junket.
a convention
It's pretty
now.
much a junket now.
Yeah.
It's what it is, a PR junket. So
Makes me think I don't want to go to Comic-Con, quite honestly.
I
I don't know. It's gotten too big for its
I
britches. if
think
you
so,
ask me.
too. I
I hear
agree.
nothing about complaints of people that have to wait for like 7 hours to get
You
into
missed the
a
entire
panel.
convention just to sit in on one panel.
Yeah, so I'm not sure I want to do Comic-Con either.
If I did go, I don't think I'd go to a panel.
I'm not sure I would either, unless there was one absolute panel I wanted to go to, and I'd sit through it, and then that would be the rest of the time. Yeah, well, that's
The
just
only
it.
panel I
And
would
then-
go to would
and
be
then
a
the re-
Doctor Who or a Lost reunion
Yeah,
panel.
and then and then the rest.
You enjoy waiting in that line. We're going to go do cool stuff while you're in
and
line.
then the rest
Lost.
of that time
Did
would
you
be
guys
me
see
looking
the-
at cosplayers, hitting the dealer's show. You're doing all that other panel,
Which in most of the
convention stuff you do.
stars had booths set up to do autographs and
Right,
stuff anyways.
right, exactly.
So that's where I would hit them.
Sure.
You guys didn't see the Damon Lindelof interview recently?
Who's Damon Lindelof?
One of the two main guys behind Lost after from season 2 to 6. He wrote Prometheus.
He's also writing Star Trek 2, isn't he?
One of the co-writers,
One of the co-writers?
with the Transformer boys. They wrote the first one.
It doesn't excuse it.
I don't count Transformers to their credit. I
What
think Michael Bay
did
ruined
what
it.
did David Lindelof say?
Well, they spent 25 minutes discussing Lost instead of Prometheus. The entire thing's on YouTube. It's a really interesting watch. It's the first time he's came out and talked about the ending of Lost since it aired.
and how bad it was?
No, he completely defends it. Of course, the guy.
That's too bad. I had a lot of respect for the guy.
The guy.
Until you just said that.
If he'd have come out and said, you know what, we dropped the ball, we screwed it up.
If he'd have said, you know what, it was a great series. We had a lot of fun. It was fun for fans to watch.
He does
we
say
just
that
really
too,
screwed up the ending.
but he doesn't say that part. He stands by his ending. Part of his defense is he didn't want to have a scene like the Matrix Reloaded of Neo and the Architect. He thinks that's the worst bit of science fiction
I
ever.
would agree. I don't like that.
He didn't want that, and
it would have been cool had they followed through with that plot thread in Revolutions,
but
they didn't.
But the scene itself is still incredibly boring and dull, and it's all just explanation.
Yeah.
He said, given the choice, if this is that scene and this is the ending of Lost or no explanation, he'll always stay on that side because because how do you find the perfect middle? You guys should really go watch it. It's on Den of Geek. It is a great interview. The only frustration I have is the interviewer is one of those fans, spoilers, that didn't believe anything on the island actually happened. And I just want to strangle those people.
I'm ready to be one of those people now. They ended it so badly. I'd like to pretend that nothing happened. That nothing on that island
Nothing
happened.
did happen.
And again, I am one of the biggest apologetics for the series. I think the series was great. It was a fun ride. I enjoyed it even in the down, in the ebbs. I enjoyed it all the way through to the very end. The end completely soured it for me. That just
I think it stayed true to itself the entire time.
I was
fans
on
focused too much
this euphoric high, and then they punched me in the gut, and that's what I hated about it. That's what I hate about Lost.
It felt very much like a sucker punch.
It did. It was just a total sucker punch at the end.
And I wasn't on a euphoric high. He
was getting beaten down and then got sucker punched.
I say before, like, I'm slogging through something. The first two seasons were the first season was so good. The second season was good. The third season, fourth season, fifth season were kind of up and down.
Five.
You
Five was
defend good. Five because of the
Five
time
was
travel
fantastic.
To it.
Five was
fantastic.
And compared to 3 and 4, yes, it was good.
My
Five was
favorite
nowhere near
season,
as good
I
as
think, was
season
3.
1.
Yeah,
I
mine
think
too.
3 is my least.
Three is definitely the downside.
But I'm sorry, I will gladly watch the Stranger in a Strange Land before ever turning to Jersey Shore. It's still better television, regardless.
You're talking apples and oranges.
It's television.
No,
it is apples and oranges, but
the bottom line
I'm just
is,
saying there are worse things that you could watch than the worst episodes
of
of Lost.
1 was good, 2 was good, 3, 4, and 5 were not so much, and then 6 was like, what the hell?
Season 6 was still... Actually, Season 6 is where I thought the potential was back. I thought, okay,
the Flash sideways?
We're getting clever with this. We're doing something different. It doesn't feel stoic. It doesn't feel...
And the reveal at the end of 3 of the Flash forwards.
It's like this is really feeling like Lost again. I feel like I'm just... My brain is being manipulated, and I'm having a lot of fun, and it's all mystery and intrigue, and I don't know what's going on. And then at the end, when I find out what's going on, it was like, really?
I think you guys should go watch the interview because he really lays out their thought process.
There's nothing you can say to me to change my opinion of that last dang episode.
That may not change your opinion, but it may change your entire look of Lost. It may not change. It may not change your thought of the end.
I don't have to look different on Lost because I appreciated the
regardless.
Rest of
it's Shaun should watch it because he didn't appreciate it.
An interview or the bonus scenes that kind of sort of wrapped up the stuff they didn't bother to talk about in the series.
The entire thing has been character driven. It's the fans that focused on the mythology and the mysteries.
The ending was not character driven.
Yes, it was.
No, it was not.
It was giving a goodbye to all the characters you've come to grow and love.
The ending episode of Lost was the biggest sci-fi plot contrivance of all time. You want to talk about something that's been done over and over and over and over again?
Regardless,
the end of Lost has been done over and over and over again.
It may have been done.
It's the cop-out plot.
It was the cop-out plot. And Damon Lindelof should be ashamed of himself if he's if he is talking about it to this day, all these years later, coming out saying, "I'll stand by it."
Here's what
BS. I'm sorry.
And I'll want to add to that. What you said earlier, that he said, "Why go in the middle there when he'd go all the way to that end instead of try to hit something in the middle." I would have made him more appreciative for him to try nail something different.
I don't think he would
and
have.
take a chance. But what he did is he took a safety net.
No, because fans, anybody,
No.
viewers would not appreciate
it. Doesn't have anything to do
Nobody
with
would
viewers.
appreciate
It was
that.
a
They would have
safety
said
net
it would have.
ending. It was totally a safety net ending.
If he would have tried to go the middle, he would have failed.
I don't think.
And everybody
The
dies.
show's over.
Everybody should have died.
The show is over. How can you fail? It's the last episode of the last
Obviously,
show.
you guys think they did.
Yes,
They did fail,
regardless.
yeah.
So obviously,
so why not try something different? That's my point. You can't be crucified for it because the show's over anyway. So the fans, if the fans are
but the
driving,
fans did crucify.
But that's just
some
it.
fans
They did.
did.
That's
And there's
you
a
know
good
why?
majority of them that did.
Do you know why?
There's a huge
because
divide.
he didn't push that envelope.
Yeah.
Lost was all about
I
pushing
think
the envelope.
all of
Lost
the
was all
fans
about
would
doing
have
something
if it-
different. And then at the
If it-
end, they
if it-
copped
if
out
it
and
went
reverted
for
back
the middle
to type.
and jumped past that, fans would have completely
Safety
crucified.
net.
He cites the very worst episode, or the one that gets closest to that scene, is the backstory of Jacob.
I would agree with that too. I didn't want
He
to know
says
as
that's
much.
the
I
he
didn't
says
want him
that's
to
the
let in-
worst episode of Lost.
I didn't want
don't
him to
agree
let on as much.
that
as
it's the
they
worst
did in
episode
that,
of
but-
Lost, but
I don't agree that it's the worst episode, but
I
I
think-
agree with the sentiment.
What's
but
that guy's name again?
Damon
Damon
Lindelof.
Lindelof.
So he's going to be a Galley then.
No.
Well, how the hell are we talking about this guy? Who else is a Galley?
That's it.
That was it. We were
We
talking about
already
Galley.
finished.
All right, what else is in the news this week? Well, the Star Trek Next Generation Doctor Who crossover released on Wednesday, at least in the United States. I don't know when it releases in the UK. I just bought my copy tonight, probably about 37 minutes ago before the show started. I bought a digital copy, so
And
I
I'll be
haven't
going
read
buying
it.
a real paper copy down
None
in
of-
my local store tomorrow.
That's right. None of us
And I'm
have
going to
read
wait
it
for the
yet.
graphic novel.
None of us have read it yet, but
I'll
I
probably
flipped
buy
through
that,
it,
too.
and
I'll read your individual comic issues and then go buy the graphic
Yeah.
novel.
I'll tell you, it looks pretty. It looks pretty.
The animation
it's got some
is-
interest.
who-
It's not animation.
Or the
Artwork.
artwork,
I'm sorry,
the drawing.
on your highfalutin technical device there, these pictures are flying by at a pretty incredible rate. It almost looks animated.
The artwork actually looks pretty cool.
Who
All
was
I've
the
gone
artist
further-
on it?
I've gone further than I had in the past. Let me go back to the first page.
I know it's written by Mr. Tony Lee, who's going to be at Galley.
Hey,
Yeah.
look at that segue! Oh, I just got that up and I can't get it. Ooh, come on, where you at?
Stop showing me pictures. I don't want to
Quit
know.
looking.
You have it open in front of me.
Quit looking.
I'm interested to see how they get it to work in each universe.
It's written by Scott and David Tipton with
Oh.
Tony Lee. They've all written that.
So
It's
Scott
the two
and David
Tiptons
Tipton
and-
would
it's the
probably
two
be
Tiptons and
Star
Tony
Trek
Lee.
author.
Tony was
Lee
probably
would be
the
the
Doctor
Doctor
Who
Who.
author.
And then the art is by J.K. Woodward. And lettering by Shaun Lee and Robbie Robbins. Robbie Robbins, what a name. I love it.
Robbie Robin.
And then it's edited by Denton J. Tipton. So the Tiptons had a lot to do with this.
Denton
The
Tipton is on Twitter.
boys. The Tipton boys.
And if you'd like to see a Sequest comic, you should tweet
he's
Denton
the one
Tipton.
that you're trying to... Yeah. That's right. I forgot about that.
He made me promise I'd stop doing that.
I didn't. You didn't. You didn't tweet it. He just broadcast it.
That's true.
All right. And our last bit of news, of course, is...
It's not news, it's speculation.
Speculation, yes.
Spoiler warning for anybody who doesn't want to know.
Spoiler.
Possible.
Possible spoiler warning.
Who knows at this point?
Yeah.
We've got
Go
some
ahead.
spoilers.
I don't. No, you
got
go
some
ahead. This is your
I don't have it
news.
pulled up.
We've
I don't
got
have
some
it pulled up.
spoilers.
You're the one that
We've
brought
got
this
some
information.
spoilers.
I did not know this
We've
information.
got some spoilers.
I don't know where I
We've
saw
got some
that.
spoilers. Spoilers.
Keep going, Glenn. Buy
There's
some time.
speculation on the name
Why do you-
of the new
I
companion.
can tell you what the news is without looking it up.
I wanted to
Obviously,
be
the rumor
official.
is that the name of what's her name? Her real name?
Jenna Louise Coleman.
Jenna
Louise
Louise.
Coleman.
Three names threw me off every time. Anybody that has three names,
Senorita Charlotte
Louise,
Taylor Wilson.
Jenna Louise Coleman. Her character's name on the show is allegedly going to be Susan.
Tyler.
Yeah,
Susan Tyler.
but her first name's going to be
But
Susan.
I also saw a rumor and speculation that the name was Clara. So I think people are just out there making up news.
Somebody's trying to dupe you.
No, it wasn't just me.
And then they tried to tie it into Back to the Future.
No, he tried to tie it in.
I automatically tied it in the Back to the Future. I thought, oh, what a nice little nod.
Oh, look, IDW can do a Back to the Future crossover now.
What if Doc was actually a Time Lord
Ooh.
with a fob watch?
No, he wasn't. But anyway. So Susan, and there's some speculation out there that, you know, there is a very famous Susan in Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And it could be interesting if they tied that into Susan Foreman.
I honestly don't put much weight in
Foreman
this.
wasn't Susan's real last name either.
That's true.
So.
I don't put much stock into this rumor. I think some fans are stretching to... They desperately want Susan to come back. They want those storylines tied up. They want to see her return, and they're just saying, hey, this could be this. And then somebody doesn't see... It's like a game of telephone. Everything gets muddled. Until I see an official release, I'm not going to believe it.
An episode.
What's her name? Jenna Louise?
Jenna Louise Coleman. I believe it's Jenna Louise -Coleman, not Jenna -Louise.
It's not hyphenated at all. Nope. She's not married. You only hyphenated if you're married.
Well, then it must be the first name. Jenna. Yeah, it is. It's Jenna Louise.
Yeah.
I'm wrong.
Hang tight here.
Speaking on the Richard Bacon show, the guy's last name is Bacon. I have to find this show. This is my new favorite show. You had me at Bacon.
See, now I'm looking something up and we're boring our...
On Wikipedia, her character is reportedly called Clara.
Clara.
See, I'm not the only one who saw that.
At any rate.
And IMDb doesn't have her listed for Doctor Who yet. That's interesting.
Because it hasn't been
aired.
right for 20 years.
There it is.
Considering it's only been around for 15.
That says something about their track record.
What's that?
IMDb.
Oh, yeah, I know that. With this where I'm going, because here's what usually happens. No, they don't have it listed. Most of the time, IMDb, somebody will put in a name, and then suddenly the wildfire of rumors start to burn across the internet because they go. And so I wanted to verify and see if IMDb had Susan on there.
I never saw Susan anywhere.
That could be where it came from. So.
I think it's
probably.
I think it's reaching
right. It's
just
probably
as much as the fact that the child in the alley was Susan.
Yeah, well, that's true too.
I think you're probably right. I think it's probably somebody said, "Oh, wouldn't it be cool if Jenna was Susan?" And that got translated
some
somewhere.
Message board somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
and it's just been.
Again, we don't perpetuate rumors,
but we are right
like
now.
to speculate on them.
We're not perpetuating anything.
No, we
just
speculate on
it.
things. We talk about them. Yeah.
So whether it's Clara or Susan, or whether Susan is Clara or Clara winds up being Susan,
or if she's not even Clara or Susan at all.
Yeah.
She could be Bob. I don't care.
Oh, you know what I thought
Doctor
of another.
Who's coming back.
You know what I thought of another thing though. Here we go. I got you. Ready? She's Susan Tyler. Did she take her mother Rose's last name? Is that what happened?
He'd have to go to an alternate universe to pick her up.
Maybe she didn't. Maybe he didn't have to pick her up. Maybe she figured a way to get over here.
Why would they have to go? Why would he have to go to an alternate universe?
I think Dr. 10.5
It'd be
and Rose had a
10.5.
baby, and it was Susan, and she figured out how to get over here.
Mickey's
maybe
obviously
she came over here.
There you go. That's what I'm saying. She could have got over here.
I don't think that's something they would do,
well,
considering the stark contrast between Tennant's and
I'm going to call it right
Smith's
now.
run.
Susan Tyler is Rose Tyler and Dr. 10.5's daughter. I'm going to say it right now.
And you'll probably be wrong.
No, I probably will be way wrong.
He'll probably be right.
But
we'll be talking about the genius of Moffat
what
and
is
then
this?
go, oh, wait a minute. You mean that was right?
This is June 3rd now? 4th. This
Mark
is
your
June
calendars,
4th.
June
Mark
4th.
your calendars.
Glenn is wrong.
I'm sure it's been out there speculated already.
Oh, as
If
soon as the
Tyler
name
was
showed
out
up,
there,
yeah.
All right.
I don't know. But
Because the doctor would want to name her Susan, and Rose would want her to keep her
I would think the doctor would want to name.
last name. Because the doctor doesn't have a last name, you know. He can't be Susan Doctor.
But would he really want to name her Susan?
Hey, named her after his granddaughter.
I want to name her after you. Let's call her the.
And his granddaughter, his granddaughter's actually
makes me
older
wonder
than his daughter.
Makes me wonder
another
what's what's the doctor's children's name is.
We don't know. We've never met any of his children. We've only met his granddaughter.
It's true. Maybe that's who it is. Maybe it's actually the doctor's actual child.
We're even talking about this.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say I don't want it to be that.
This is not even
because I don't
then
want
it
the
becomes
Tylers,
a soap opera.
Yeah, well, I don't want the Tylers to come back. I'm done with them.
This is not even the season that's going to return. This is not even the part of the season that's going to return in like less than 4 months. This is like the Christmas.
This is next
It's
year. This
when
is
Jill
2013.
Well,
No,
Well,
it's not. Yeah,
we'll find out this
the
year.
end of this year. Yeah,
but just at the very end of this year.
With a week to go.
There's-
week
this
to
is
go
a
this year.
lot. This is far out for speculation, guys.
Which is why I don't put stock in
No, I don't
any
put
of the
any
names.
stock in it either. Anyway, well, let's go to feedback.
First up, Alex, a.k.a. Moldwitch.
Hi, Alex.
We haven't heard from Moldwitch in a while.
Hey, guys, what's up?
What's up? Please don't do that.
Okay.
First up, I know it's been a while for some feedback, but I have still been listening to every show and still loving it. You are actually one of the only Who podcasts that is putting out shows regularly, so congrats on that, as it seems everyone else is having breaks, but you guys keep rolling. But honestly, it just gets like that during the mid-season breaks. Hell, even my Doctor Who chat has calmed down a bit. Probably seems I'm only speaking comic books lately, but I have started trawling through Gallifrey Base Forum again, and I'm rewatching the Hartnell episodes on Netflix as of Monday this week. So expect my Twitter stream and conversation to be a lot more Who-centric again.
That's okay. We've been talking a lot about comic books of late, too.
Yeah, we really have.
Secondly, agree with the Avengers love.
And here we go.
I have seen it 9 times.
Holy cow.
And that will be it for me until it's released on DVD Blu-ray. But even the last viewing, I was still chuckling at the Hulk and getting far too excited at the battle scenes. Did you guys see what they're releasing? I'm sorry.
Puny God.
They're releasing
The Avengers box?
the Avengers box and the Avengers Initiative box Phase 1, where it's everything up to and including the Avengers.
Oh, that's cool.
It'll be Iron Man 2, Incredible Hulk,
like
Captain America.
$185.
I won't buy it because I already own half the movie.
And it's in one of those ridiculous
More
cases
than half now.
that won't fit on your shelf.
Yeah.
It's one of the Shield silver briefcases.
Right.
It's still really cool.
That's neat.
And it
That's
has a
neat idea,
bonus
especially
disc.
if you haven't bought the discs yet. And you
But
intend to.
I have a problem with it. 10 disc sets. It includes 3 3D versions and then a bonus disc.
Thor, Captain America,
Avengers.
and Avengers.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Is Hulk in there? Because that's still
it is.
Incredible
That's
Hulk.
weird.
Hulk is
That's
not.
what I meant.
Is Hulk Hulk?
No,
No, Incredible Hulk.
Incredible Hulk.
Not the Hulk.
Not the Hulk.
Nobody talks about the
don't-
Hulk
don't-
anymore.
don't-
Talk about the Hulk. It's a fine movie, but we don't talk about the Hulk. The Incredible Hulk, is it in there because it's still
It
an
is.
MCA title? That's or not
Yeah.
MCA. I went
Well,
way back to the 80s.
count 'em.
It's still
Iron
a
Man
universal
1,
title.
Iron Man
MCA
2,
Universal.
Iron Man... No, Iron Man
Just
3.
Iron Man 3.
Incredible
Iron Man 2,
Hulk.
Incredible Hulk.
Thor, Captain America,
The Avengers.
Avengers. 3
3D. Oh, that's
bonus disc.
Oh, and then bonus. Okay.
Because I was counting through. I was making sure everything was there.
So I'm going to own more than 10 discs by the time I'm done just getting them individually, though, because each one of those have a bonus disc. So.
All the ones I own are 2 disc.
Yeah, so I already have 10 discs, and none of them will be 3D because I don't care about 3D at home. All right,
Yeah, but
anyway,
that's not a
segue.
bonus disc, is it?
Segue.
Okay. Yeah.
Thirdly and finally, back to Doctor Who and a confession. I have never listened to a Big Finish audio story. I have read a few books, but none for a long time, and seeing how much you guys are enjoying them, can you recommend?
The audios or the books?
I'm assuming audio.
I assume he would mean he's asking us for a specific recommendation.
What ones have you listened to so far would you recommend? Not which did you enjoy more, but what would you recommend? Well, Alex, you can look back to previous episodes.
Any of the Eighth Doctor ones.
I've listened
that I've listened to. I would
quite
highly
far
recommend.
into the Eighth Doctor.
But you're still talking main range.
I would
Yes,
definitely
main
go with
range.
Sirens of Time. It's not the most phenomenal,
It's a good.
but it's a good starting place. Even the, and,
Yeah.
it is number 1 in the main line, and
And
it
also
gives you a dose of all the
It
doctors.
gives you a dose of all the doctors to
Well,
come.
with
It
the
gives you,
exception of
and it gives you a feel for how these things are going to work.
Yeah.
You know, so you should kind of have a.
And it's still dirty. It's not polished yet.
Yeah.
And it has that feel, but it only has that feel if you've listened to other ones before it. But if you start there, you don't get that, and it continues to get better.
It just means they get better from there.
I would go with. I'm going to have to go jump out there and say Spare Parts. It's my favorite Big Finish audio right now. But I'm not saying it because it's my favorite. I'm saying it because it is a well-done Peter Davison, and it's got an adversary that everybody knows, and it's a Genesis story, and it's so well done. So I would go. That was the first one I ever listened to.
I jumped into it with the very first McGann, which the name is blanking on me now.
That was
Storm Warning.
Storm Warning. Yeah.
I would recommend going there and just listening to eight stories all the way up through. I mean, you don't have to, but
Even Minuet in Hell.
Slog through Minuet in Hell. That is the dip in his stories.
No, Moldovich Minuet in Hell was good.
All the way up through. I'm blanking on the name now.
You can find this on Wiki.
Neverland? Neverland?
No, the one past that. No, wait. Yeah, the one past Neverland.
I can't remember.
Hold on.
They're not on the schedule
We're
yet.
so prepared.
Let me
Anyway,
look at
Shaun,
this.
you got any recommendations?
The first 2 seasons of the Eighth Doctor adventures, specifically.
I wouldn't start there, though.
I'm not saying start there.
because you're
He's
regretting
just asking.
starting there.
He's just asking for recommendations. I don't regret starting there.
Zagreus.
I think you do.
In a way, I do, because the format's different.
Yeah.
Because the Eighth Doctor Adventures feels more like New Who, being in that hour-long format, and then you go back to a traditional Big Finish, and it's the 4-part classic Who feel.
Yeah.
So it is a little jarring if you're not used to that.
Right.
But of the mainline ones that we've listened to so far, I've really enjoyed a good chunk of the Paul McGann's, with the exception of Minuet in Hell. Not that it was a bad story, just not one of my favorites.
It's the dip in his run. His are
I've really
phenomenal.
enjoyed all of the Sixth Doctor stuff. I mean, it sounds cliche to say that, but I've really, really, really enjoyed those. Really, who's your favorite Doctor?
Yeah.
Pick one of those and start there.
Yeah.
I mean,
I got another one I'd recommend. The One Doctor. It's it's Mel.
Colin, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Colin Baker and Mel. It's the Sixth Doctor and Mel, and it's phenomenal. It's so good, so good. I mean, it's fun. It's a blast.
I mean, the beauty of the Big Finish audios is that if you have a Doctor who's like, oh, I really, really enjoyed Sylvester McCoy, well, then go listen to a Sylvester McCoy Big Finish, because it's more Sylvester McCoy, and you get back on that horse, and it's a Sylvester McCoy adventure you've never seen and won't. But yeah, I mean, it's you just you listen to it and you go with it there. If there's a Doctor that you'd like to get a little more of, like me, I was not the biggest Colin Baker fan, and getting into him and going, oh, this is what he was supposed to be like, and not quite there on the show, and it's made me appreciate the episodes so much more. So I mean, it's a door that swings both ways, and it's
Keith, did you come up with yours?
Zagreus.
Zagreus. Very good.
He finishes out his email with P.S. Life model decoy Benny Hill for Olympic torch would have been epic. P.P.S. Did any of you guys read the IDW Doctor Who and he says Star Wars, but I know he means Star Trek comic or crossover comic? Well, we answered that earlier.
Not yet.
P.P.P.S. Keep up the good work, guys. I'll try to get a Saturday morning Who events with you all soon. Much love, Alex Moldowich.
It's funny, he sent this on Tuesday, and that comic didn't release but I don't think he knew.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it released differently
Maybe
in
it
the UK.
did in the UK.
So.
Wednesday is Comic Book Day in the U.S.
Yes.
So.
All
Up
right.
next.
As always, Alex, thanks for coming, writing into us. And
Glad to know you're still listening despite not hearing from you.
That's right.
And he's been very busy with, it's sidekickcast.com? Is that his?
I think that's...
I believe so, because he started
it.
Marvel something.
Yeah, we want to throw that in the show notes for him, which is a little plug for his website, and a very good one that deals primarily with the comic book scene. Yes, I do frequent it every now and then.
Up next, Andrew.
Andrew. I hit the wrong button.
Way to be prepared.
I was prepared. Oh, no.
You were
too far.
prepared.
Too far. Back.
Guess what? I have it.
I hit the right button.
Go
I hit
ahead,
it too
Glenn.
far.
Thank
You go
you.
ahead, Glenn. I'm reloading my email.
Hello, me again and again. I have two things I want to comment on. This is from Andrew. Firstly, about the that was the title, by the way. Firstly, about the Daleks. Really, if you want to see Daleks being Daleks, You need to watch or listen to what's left of the Dalek Master Plan. Ever since reading the second part of the Target novelization as a boy, the library did not have the first part, so I only found out who Katrine was when I watched a recon last year. I've considered it the definitive Dalek story, and I heartily recommend it, except it's 12 episodes long, 13 if you include Mission to the Unknown. Definitely not something for Friday Night Who, nonetheless highly enjoyable. I found it worth it for a while. I found it worth it for the white mouse scene alone. It pretty much sums up everything you need to know about the Daleks. Secondly, last week's show touched on the having an American doctor idea, which was raised by one of your other listeners. You touched on it again this week, and I couldn't hold back. So, profuse apologies in advance. This will be long. I think it was Glenn who suggested it might cause problems as Doctor Who is such a British institution. To be honest, that is not a problem. T is a British institution, and it comes from China. The problem is that the whole point of the character is that he's a typical establishment. He has a typical establishment figure, but does not act in a typical establishment way. If you look at the first episode, Barbara and Ian are both quite respectful to Dr. Foreman, because that's how they see him, an elderly grandfather. Then he abducts them and drags them back to the Stone Age. That's who the Doctor is, the kindly grandfather who kidnaps your school teachers. Now imagine the same...
Suddenly it becomes a whole different... If there was an American Doctor Who, it would be written by Stephen King. Come with me into the dark.
Now listen, now imagine the same scene, but instead of the Edwardian-suited Doctor, Ian and Barbara are confronted with an anti-establishment figure, say a mod rocker or an East End gangster. Would that work? No, because what's the fun in watching an anti-establishment figure act in an anti-establishment way?
That's a very good point.
I would agree with him to an extent.
Now, being a British program, the writers made all of the Doctor's establishment trappings, British establishment trappings. He's a Time Lord. He travels in London in a London Metropolitan Police phone box. He's a scientist and a doctor, all distinctively British establishment tropes. If you choose to make the Doctor American, it would conflict with all of the above. You could do an American version of the show by changing things to their American equivalents. For example, instead of a London police phone box, make it a UPS Postal Service truck. Or US Postal Service truck. Instead of a Time Lord, make him a Time Senator, and so on. But you couldn't do a mix of the two, at least not successfully. Incidentally, the Master doesn't have this problem, as he's never had any establishment trappings, except his names, British or otherwise. Lastly, just want to say thanks for all the work you put into the show and providing a free entertainment for us all. It is appreciated. Regards, Andrew. I think he makes some very good points there.
He does make some really good points. Although, I guess for me, thinking of an American doctor, it's still the Doctor, he just doesn't have a British accent. The question that I thought, when I thought of the question posed to us, it was, what would an American actor be like as that role? I assumed it was just, okay, it's still the BBC institution, the BBC is still running, it's still a phone box.
As opposed to an Americanized Doctor
As opposed
Who.
to Americanized Doctor Who, I thought of it as putting an American actor in the role of the Doctor. I don't think that would have to change anything.
I think my problem with it is I think if you add an American actor into it, it automatically, inherently Americanizes it.
I don't think so.
And so I think from that perspective, yeah, it wouldn't work because it is added a element of Americanization to it, and suddenly it's stepped away from the Britishness that it is, regardless of how Andrew's presenting it, which I agree with what he's saying, but it's very British. The show is very, very British, and if you add an American actor in there, it takes that much away from the British aspects of it. So I don't think it would work. I still don't think it would ever work.
I want to talk
about
about
he's still the Doctor. Yes, he still continues on. But
I want to go back to Andrew's comment about free. Are you not subscribing to this? Or are you not paying us for
your monthly dues?
Wow. We need to talk to our accountant about that.
Well, you haven't gotten a paycheck in a year and a half, have you?
You mean you're not getting paid?
Well, I am, but I'm not paying you guys.
Oh, that's where that's going. I'm going on strike.
Are you kidding? Of course he's getting paid. He just bought discs.
I don't know if you mean
kidding.
Doctor Who
That's
or...
for my other job that Shaun tweeted out this week.
Yeah.
So.
I'm kidding, Andrew. We are 100% free, but if you'd like to support us, please buy something from our Amazon store.
If you appreciate this program and you like it to stay free,
And commercial free.
commercial free, it's highly recommended that you buy something from the Amazon store.
Our next bit of feedback comes from Phil.
Phil! I have this one, so...
Good.
Do you want me to read it? Or?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay, I'll read this one. I always read Phil's. I don't want to read... No, I'm kidding.
Fine, I'll read Phil's.
I'm kidding.
Common question.
Hey, did you see that monkey charge the glass last week? It was a chimp, I know. Okay.
It's an ape.
Yeah, I insulted the apes.
Caesar's going to come after you. Did you see that they announced release date and title for the next Planet of the Apes
No,
films?
did they?
Are you
Yes.
reading Phil's... Is that,
Hold
is
on.
that part of Phil's message?
Hang on,
Yes.
this is important.
No,
What
it's
is
not
it?
Dawn of the Planet of the Apes
Ooh,
in
good
2014. Same writer and director.
Dawn of the Planet of the
We
Apes.
couldn't have
Good
said
title.
this. We couldn't have said this in
I-
What Did We Do This Week or in news.
I didn't
Come
think
on.
about it
Think
until he
about it
said
until I
ape.
made the chimp joke.
If it's not on the pre-show notes,
Since when has that stopped us?
nah, it hasn't.
Don't grab that one. That's the crappy version.
Yeah.
Good God.
You still haven't seen it?
No, and now you're talking about it, so I got to take
Oh.
it and put it in line with the other things I still
Bring
have
it back
of yours.
quickly.
Is that one yours?
Yeah.
But that one's his, so you're not borrowing from me.
I'm protective of that one. It's
I'll watch that one first. And get
Favorite
back.
of the year.
He's not that protective.
it
I own a
raised
lot
up
more
to
than
the
he
top
does.
10.
I'm not in a hurry to get back to it.
Top 10 list.
What's Phil
for
have
me.
to say?
What's Phil have to say?
I thought you were going to read it.
Okay. I thought you were going to read it.
I was joking.
Oh.
Phil says,
don't toy
comment
with Phil's
question, hey
emotions.
Hooptikins,
Just finished up your Renegades and Rogues recap and wanted to put in a few words. One,
I'm not going there this week. Don't make me go there.
Rassilon and Omega. Listening to you talk about the two of them, I couldn't help but compare them to Stalin and Trotsky. Omega probably was the smarter of the two and realistically should have been the leader of the Time Lords. But Rassilon found a way to get him out of the picture, or just took the opportunity that presented. Bit by bit, though, through propaganda and education, Omega's contributions are marginalized, forgotten, or attributed to Rassilon.
Phil, once again, I want to thank you for being the smartest guy in the room. I read the first line of this. He's like, yeah, it's like Stalin. And I'm like, only Phil could go there. He is. Hey, Phil knows this stuff. Phil's steeped in history, and I love it when he comes up with something and goes, oh, that's just like the such and such revolution of, and I have to nod my head and go, okay. Because I don't know. But he does.
I know who Stalin is, I just don't know who Trotsky is.
Well, you know why?
Obviously.
Because Stalin got him out of the way.
Yeah. 2. The Doctor as a renegade. I think he's definitely a renegade Time Lord. I wrote and rewrote a compelling justification for the stance.
I love this.
But it would get muddled quickly. I even tried to insert another historical parallel using Martin Luther, but no amount of editing could get it to imaginable size. So to keep it brief, given what we know of the Time Lord Society / government, and the Doctor's action, he seems to meet the definition of renegade. The ruling elite of Gallifrey was probably concerned he would become a revolutionary Time Lord if they couldn't find a way to either get rid of him or keep him busy.
That's the most profound statement right there.
I think,
and I hadn't thought much about this. That they were afraid he would become a revolutionary Time Lord if he couldn't find a way to either get rid of him or keep him busy, and that they did both. They first of all tried to get rid of him. Second of all, they tried to keep him busy. And that's totally...
So does that mean, now we've opened up this Pandora's box of what if, everything the Doctor has done from stealing the TARDIS, and we've joked about how apparently easy it was for him to get a key and
Doctor's
run
wife,
off.
he meant
She stole him. Yeah.
Well,
we know.
allowed access for him,
But
the point
was the key left in the TARDIS for him to find? Did the Time Lords engineer his escape from the Society?
See, I
don't know
to
if
give him
they
something to do,
engineered.
and that's why he's not being dogged by them for the first however many number of years. He thinks he is. He thinks he's being sneaky and run off with the car and all this kind of stuff.
No,
and they're just not looking for him.
No,
I think
they are looking for him. They're just not actively looking.
Yeah,
for him.
I think it's a view of, okay, we couldn't get rid of him. Look, he ran off with the TARDIS. Oh, he can't cause harm. Look, he's keeping busy.
See, no. I'd say that's not how I see that at all. I think the guy had some different ideas and he ran, and that's ultimately what happens. Well, the Time Lords feel like, well, now that this has happened, he's already made a statement. He has nailed the
revolutionary
to the door of the church, and that's his way of doing it. He's run. He's tired of the stoic. We don't travel through time. We just observe now. We don't adventure. We just observe. He's gotten tired of that, so he's run. He's gone off to do his own adventuring. So they see that and they say, okay, this guy could be a problem. This is where they say, okay, this is Jesus rallying up the troops. Could overthrow Rome. That's what they're looking at, and I think that's where that starts is when he runs. I think that's where. So they aren't actively chasing him, but they're looking for him. If he ever comes back or they stumble across him, then
and that's why they're so eager to pounce in war games because they've.
And so when they do come across him in war games, they are eager to pounce. And now it's we can get rid of him. What do we do to get rid of him? We change him and we banish him to Earth. He can't do any harm there, so he's banished. That's his. They're not going to kill him. The guy hasn't done anything that warrants death yet to them. But theyey're going to banish him. This is
because the Castellan hasn't gotten into power yet.
This is the worst they can do. They can ground him on a
backwater.
Sol 3, which to them is a backwater planet that hasn't, there's no space travel.
What do you mean to them? To us, it's a backwater.
Well, that's true. But anyway, so they put him there, and then they just keep him out of the way. Well, suddenly, once they need him or they have problems, then they say, well, you know what? He's still there. They obviously know that he's working on his TARDIS, trying to get it. So this guy could end up running again and causing us problems. So let's put him to work doing things for us. So what do? They send him into the antimatter universe to deal with Omega, and then they send him into what was the next? Oh, the Master comes. They say, well, you got a problem with the Master here on Earth, so they warn him about that, and then they put him in the way of the Daleks and Genesis, and they say you got to fix something. Now suddenly they're using him to their benefit. And I think that's where this comes across, and that's how I agree with what he's saying here. Is we either get him out of the way or we keep him busy, and that's what they've done.
I can see that.
I could see that. I guess I view it as they're not keeping him busy enough because he's off doing other stuff.
I don't think they are. No, they're doing a bad job of it. I agree with that.
Yeah.
They're doing a bad job.
If Damon Lindelof had created Doctor Who, they would have been behind it all from the beginning. But he would have screwed up the end.
Okay. 3.
Go on with third.
Rassilon. Sorry, Shaun, but if point 1 didn't give it away, I think Rassilon was never a good guy. Now, being a historian, I know not to label people good or bad. Everyone's the hero of their own tale, but given what I've seen, and admittedly there's a lot I haven't seen, and what I know about human nature and past administration/rulers/ etc., it seems fairly obvious that Rassilon craved power, understood the importance of propaganda in rewriting history, and any semblance of benevolence on his part was likely calculated or exaggerated. Maybe the Doctor stumbled upon this in his early days, a hunch leading to a suspicion, years spent poring over forgotten libraries until the shocking truth is revealed. I'd love to see someone go back and cover a story like this. Perhaps William Hartnell's Doctor wasn't the prodigal son so much as a man who has seen the truth and knows no way to set things right, and so he stole a TARDIS and ran, hoping to escape responsibility.
And this is where Phil and I part ways.
Well, it sounded good anyways.
It's a sound theory.
Odd duck Phil.
Yeah, it's a sound theory, and I like the idea here put forward.
I agree that Rassilon was never a good guy.
I agree with that. I totally agree with that. And I agree that, a person's painted either a hero or a villain based on their tail. I totally agree with that. However, I don't think the Doctor suspected so much of Rassilon. I think he had ideas, but I don't think he had any more ideas than anybody else maybe did.
And because so much of it's lost in
exactly.
the midst of...
Because even at the point of the 5 Doctors, when the second Doctor is talking about Rassilon, there's still a bit of relevance in his voice. Even though he does say, well, there are these accounts, you kind of get the impression that he's maybe on the fence of what he believes of Rassilon, but that's not a Doctor that knows something before he has left Gallifrey. So I would have to disagree with that. And Phil attributes the fact that he hasn't seen as much. But I like the theory. It's a sound theory.
It's a great
but
idea.
It doesn't hold.
Yeah.
There's
evidence against it.
It doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't formulate as a theory. So.
Well, and I don't want to. My thought that Rassilon was a good guy kind of grew from my. This is what we learned about him initially, and so coming at it from an old Who standpoint and leading up to it, there was that reverence and that, it's Rassilon and he's come to save us and blah, blah, blah. And you buy into the hype.
Well, and it doesn't help that the Time Lords all perpetuate that, too.
Right, that's just it, yes.
But as we've gone back and seen more and more and more that people have begun to poke holes in that myth and poke holes in that theory, and then we actually get Rassilon back as Timothy Dalton, then it's kind of fairly obvious that we're now very much led to believe this is the way this is going to turn out.
But also in some 8th Doctor Big Finish stories, it pokes holes in it, too.
Very cool. Although
looking forward to that. Then.
I do like the idea of William Hartnell's Doctor going from library to library, riding a horse through the mountains of Mordor, trying to find that parchment that reveals that Rassilon's got the one ring. Oh, wait.
Looking for the goods.
I still wonder how young he was when he stole the TARDIS. I mean, we meet him as an elderly man nearing his regeneration. Assumedly.
We don't know that he's near his regeneration.
Well, regardless...
Any more than any other Time Lord.
An elderly man.
By Earth standards, yeah.
By Earth standards. Well, I mean, obviously, The Sound of Drums and Last of the Time Lords obviously show that you can get to 900 years old and still be in the same body.
Exactly.
I mean, from the standpoint...
For that matter, the Day of the Moon and The Impossible Astronaut shows you can get to $1,000 and be... I mean, that's the longest that the Doctor's lived on. No, he's gone from 9 to, or it's not 1,000. It's
he was 1,100. But
1,100.
You're talking about
200
you're talking about
years
a 200-year gap in the same body.
Yeah, in the same body.
Well, I guess that's true.
Yeah.
So that makes me wonder even more then how long he had been.
And he doesn't look like he's aged any. Yeah.
There's two ways to look at it. The linchpin here is Susan, because he has his granddaughter with him at the time, and she looks at him as a grandfatherly, elderly figure.
I wonder if
one would assume that they left together, that he snagged her and they ran, and probably was pretty close to his appearance at the time we met him. I'm not saying that he left Gallifrey and immediately went and settled on Earth.
Right.
Obviously, he did some traveling in between, but he was still probably an elderly gentleman. Or the other option is he left and then went back for Susan, which that's a heck of a story, because maybe he did. Maybe he left as a young man and then snuck back into the Panopticon to break her out.
We'll never know.
Yeah, there's a story to tell.
Yeah.
So
who knows?
Might be in some of the novels we come across too.
And maybe it will be in season 7.
Maybe. Who's next, Keith?
He breaks her at his 11th incarnation. You're going to go live with this cranky old guy for a while.
Up next, Holly.
Holly Mac. Hey guys, congratulations on hitting episode 75. 3/4 of the way to 100. I'd put that in there. That wasn't written.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Looking forward to many more episodes to come. Very cool that you're going to be reviewing some of the numerous Doctor Who books out there. Out of the 3 books that you're reviewing, I've read Only Human and The Story of Martha. It's been a while since I read those 2, but I remember enjoying them. I'm planning on going back and rereading some of the Doctor Who books I have this summer. I have all the books in 9's run, a smattering of 10's, and I've read the majority of the 11th Doctor books, a few of which I may buy in the future. If my memory serves, The Story of Martha is the only book in the BBC line that's a compilation of stories. Torchwood's book line also has one of short stories called Consequences. I also finished Shada, so Glenn, I know you were getting at not spoiling... I know what you were getting at with not spoiling Shaun or Keith in the Rogues or Renegades archive. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on all 3 of these books. Holly from Wisconsin. And as always, Holly, thank you so much.
And Holly brings up a point that we will reiterate again later at the end of the podcast of we are pushing Shada back.
Once again.
Because whenever we looked it up earlier, the release date was wrong.
That's right.
And now in the U.S., the release date is June 26th.
So in order to give all of you the same opportunity that, because we don't want to just go, we've got a digital copy
that's not available in the U.S. yet.
Make you import it.
Yeah.
So we're gonna hold off on that until it's widely available in Northern America, since that seems to be where the majority of our listeners are located, and make it easy for you to get one. But we'll cover that with our scheduling notes later in the podcast.
All right, very good. Well, shall we move along to our reviews?
First up,
right along.
The Crooked World. The people of the Crooked World lead an idyllic existence. Take Streaky Beacon, for example.
Bacon. Streaky Bacon.
Streaky Bacon, for example. This jovial farmer wants nothing more than to live a life than... I'm sorry. Let me start over.
You want me to do it?
This jovial farmer wants nothing more from life than a huge blunderbuss, but with which he can blast away at his farm, stealing nemesis. And then there's Angel Falls, a racing driver with a string of victories to her name. Sure, her trusted guardian might occasionally put on a mask and menace her for her prize money, but that's just life, right? And for Jasper the cat, nothing can be more pleasant than a nice long nap in his kitchen. So long as that darn mouse doesn't jam his tail into the plug socket again. But somebody is about to shatter all those lives. Somebody is about to change everything. And it's possible that no one on the Crooked World will ever be happy again. The Doctor's TARDIS is about to arrive. And when it does, that's all, folks.
And I'll do it. Dun, dun, dun! Because I really enjoyed this.
I think it should have been a dun 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 dun.
And I'll set this up by saying this is a book that I probably would have never picked up off the shelf back when it was released, because the cover, we talked a little bit about this when you guys saw the cover earlier. The cover is not very appealing. Now, the cover entirely fits with the mood of this book when you finally read the book.
Even reading the synopsis, you kind of can
But looking
guess.
at this, if I had flipped this over and read the back, I'd have thought, what is this? But here's what happened is the Doctor Who Book Club, another podcast, actually reviewed this 2 months ago, I believe it was. So I'm going from 2 months old memory almost. I think it was in March. Maybe it was April. It was April. It was when they actually reviewed this. So that's back when I read this, was in April. So forgive me if the memory cheats a little bit. But they did this, and I thought I'd get on board and start listening to their podcast. And so I thought, well, for that month, I'll go ahead and start here. And that's where we were. And I thought, Eighth Doctor. I was really getting into Eighth Doctor because at the time, we were listening to Eighth Doctor audios. And I love the movie. You guys know how much I love the movie. So I'm really getting into Paul McGann. And I thought, okay, well, this is a great place to start for me, even though this sounds a little weird. Anyway, so as I started reading this, it wasn't then until it sunk in that how weird this really is. And this book takes a little bit to get into. But the funny thing is it was so different that it was captivating. Because when the TARDIS lands, Streaky Bacon is a pig. He's a pig dressed in a farmer's outfit. He's got suspenders, or overalls, I guess I should say, and a hat. And he's carrying a blunderbuss, which if anybody doesn't know, it's the wide-brimmed guns, that they shoot in cartoons. It's like they hunted turkeys, I think.
The elephant gun. Okay.
There you go. And he's chasing what's called a whatchamacallit, which from the description of it kind of reminds me of maybe a manic roadrunner. It's kind of maybe a cross between Woody Woodpecker and the Roadrunner. And he's chasing it. And the story starts out as he's chasing this thing, because it continues to get into his crops on his farm. The TARDIS materializes on Streaky Bacon's farm, and the Doctor, Angie, and Fritz, Angie and Fritz are his companions at this point in the book. Now, this book takes place in the Eighth Doctor Adventures line of BBC Books when they came out after the movie came out. So this is, I don't remember exactly how far down the line this is, but I think it was one of the last in the Eighth Doctor novels, or towards the end of the run anyway. So he's traveling with a companion named Fritz and another companion named Angie. And Angie, I believe, is I want to say maybe Indian. gal, just based on her name in the description they give of her. Anyway, so Angie and Fritz have landed, and the Eighth Doctor and Fritz step out, and Streaky Bacon is so taken aback by what's happening that he fires and shoots the Doctor with his blunderbuss. And the Doctor falls to the ground, and he's actually, like, bleeding. And Streaky Bacon, first of all, is confused, because often when he shoots something, the whatchamacallit or whatever, or he accidentally gets shot himself, they just turn soot black, and then later they're okay. And so he's confused, and so Fritz is freaking out, and they end up summoning an ambulance, which just kind of just shows up on its own. They throw the Doctor in the back of the ambulance. They take him into what's called Zany Town. That's one of the towns on Crooked World. And Zany Town is very much, I imagine from the description, if you saw the scene in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where Eddie goes into Toontown, this is essentially what you envision by reading the description of this. But the ambulance runs around the block several times and just continues to go. And the ambulance, which is an anthropomorphic ambulance, it actually talks, is asking to the back, so is he okay yet? Because I got other people I have to go. Because in this world, people just heal. They're just fine, and then they go on with the rest of their lives, and things happen.
Cartoons.
As this book goes along, what you start to realize is they have landed on a world of cartoons, particularly Warner Brother, Fritz Lang, and Hanna-Barbera style cartoons. And a lot of the characters
which is
are parallel,
predominantly a lot of the
parallel
television
to that,
cartoons.
because you get the impression that Streaky Bacon maybe is a bit Porky Piggish, maybe kind of a cross between Porky Pig and Elmer Fudd. Anyway, so Fritz decides that the Doctor is not going to heal, so he takes him into a hotel, gets him set up in a hotel room. Everything seems to be okay. But meanwhile, Angie's back at the TARDIS, and she leaves the TARDIS to go find Fritz and the Doctor. She doesn't know what's happened, so she leaves the TARDIS and runs into, as the synopsis talks about, Angel Falls. And Angel Falls is in a race, which is very similar to, if anybody remembers, the Wacky Racers. And she meets up with her in the middle of this race, and Angie's very, you imagine she's a very bosom, very attractive woman, and she's got probably the pink helmet, the blonde hair, and she's always the one that wins the race. And you've always got, I think one of the racers actually is reminded me, I can't remember what his name, Dastardly Duck, I think is what he was, and he kind of reminds you of maybe an evil Daffy Duck. And
I don't think he had a first name. I think it was just Dastardly and Muttley.
Well, that was Dastardly was the villain in Wacky Racers.
Right.
In this, I think it's Dastardly Duck.
So it's probably Dastardly and
it's kind
Daffy
of the equivalent
combined.
of what Dastardly and
Gotcha.
Muttley were in the Wacky Racers. Anyway, so not to go into point A to point B of this story, but what has happened is, throughout the course of this book, you realize that as the Doctor, Angie, and Mitch have set down on Crooked World, what has happened is they have introduced free will, because things start to happen, and one of the first things that starts to happen is the fact that Streaky Bacon doesn't know what has happened to the good Doctor. So he feels very guilty for what's happened, because this has never happened before, that somebody hasn't healed from their demise. And so he actually goes and turns himself into the sheriff, which is Sheriff Dog, which is clearly it's Boss Dog is what it is.
Boss Dog.
And which is clearly he's the town sheriff, and it's Deputy Dog, obviously. And he's got a little scrappy nephew who is his deputy. And so what has happened is he's very remorseful for what he does, and he goes to the sheriff and he tells the sheriff, I think I've killed somebody. And the sheriff's like, no, you didn't kill anybody. That doesn't happen. The guy obviously probably healed. And so Streaky's going through this real emotional issue. He actually turns himself into the sheriff and wants to be locked up because he feels like he's committed murder, or at least done some crime, which he's never felt this way before. And so, of course, Boss Dog is like, no, don't worry about it. It's no big deal. That doesn't happen in this town. And as we go on, Angie ends up coming across a crew called, and I'm going to have to look their names up because they're wonderfully done. Oh gosh, it's going to be ways down here. They come across a crew that's very similar to the Scooby-Doo gang, which is fantastic. And it's a wonderful scene in the book because as she comes up across them, their car has broken down, and they have been wandering through the forest, and they come running from the forest, and there's this big green ghost-looking thing chasing them as they're running. And as they run by Angie, they say, "Quick, run! We have to get away from this thing." And she says, "Well, why? It's just a man in a green sheet." And so she actually ends up tripping the guy. He falls down. She pulls his, cape off, says, "See, this is just a guy in a sheet." And when Boss Dog shows up to arrest the guy says, "Well, what have you been doing?" And I can't remember exactly what he had been doing in the woods, but he said, "I would have gotten away from it if it hadn't been for these." And he looks at Angie and goes, "Actually, her." And points at Angie because she's the one that foils this thing. So and then the Scooby Gang, quote unquote Scooby Gang, become a element in this book later on as well as we get towards the kind of the plot direction. But what has happened is the one pinnacle in the book I think I have to point out that's very important, and actually the book becomes very dark and even gruesome at a point. Because
that seems unusual for a
in this hotel where
cartoons.
We're in this hotel where Fritz and the doctor are staying. In the kitchen of this house is a cat named Jasper and a mouse named, I'm going to forget his name, but it's the Tom and Jerry character essentially. So it's Jasper and this mouse, and things have always happened in such a way that Jasper always has to keep catch the mouse, but he never does. The mouse is always doing things to Jasper, as in putting his tail in the light socket or dropping an iron in his face, things like that. What happens is Fritz comes in to the kitchen to find something to eat because they haven't had anything to eat since they got there, and they have no room service, nothing's going on. So he's come down, and
which I would assume they're not used to eating.
I'm assuming because they never say anything about eating in this world.
I mean, they never eat. They rarely eat in comics or cartoons.
And if they do, then it's
unless it's Tom and Jerry, in which case there's always a raid on the icebox,
or they fight over food.
They fight over it, but they never eat it.
The Thanksgiving feast where they're using food in their war, that kind of thing. But anyway, so Fritz has come down, and I don't remember exactly what the confrontation between him and Jasper are, but Jasper ends up hitting him in the face with an iron. And when Fritz reacts to that and is actually stunned and hurt, Jasper's confused. And so what happens is he ends up following Fritz around, and he's kind of stepped out of his normal routine of chasing the mouse. And so he follows Fritz around because he's perplexed. He's curious as to why this affected this guy like it does. Normally it doesn't affect anybody in Crooked World or in Zany Town in such a way. Anyway, through the course of the book, Jasper ends up going back to the kitchen, and he has sort of realized that his life has been just this perpetual happening of him never getting the mouse. And when he finally ends up trapping the mouse at one point, he actually takes and bites the head off of this is where it gets really dark and gruesome.
Wow.
He bites the head off of the mouse just as an impulse thing, and the mouse doesn't come back. Usually, when something dies or something happens, but it doesn't. Then the mouse doesn't come back. And so Jasper then is arrested for the first murder in Zany Town, or the first murder on Crooked World ever. So Boss Dog, and I guess what has happened is throughout the town, people are first of all horrified that this could happen, and people all across Crooked World end up starting to have these feelings of basically free will. They're starting to realize that they don't have to be in these certain lives. And of course, Boss Dog's trying to keep a handle on this, and he keeps saying, "No, this isn't the way it is. This is how it's supposed to be. You go back to beating each other up. Cats end up cats run from dogs, mice run from cats. That kind of thing." But there's like a revolution happening now at this point. And so the doctor, who is by this point healed, steps in, and he starts to try to introduce. He starts to have them deal with their feelings and what's happening on this world. And so it becomes kind of a counter to Boss Dog, who's just saying, just ignore it. It's, go back to your old ways. The doctor's saying, well, this is something that has happened now, so we need to deal with it. And
you can't just ignore it.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a whole subplot going along as Angel Falls has teamed up. She's fallen for Fritz. There's a whole humorous thing about how Fritz is very enamored with her, and they're sort of trying to discuss how babies come along, and she says, well, when two people really love each other, they write a letter to the stork and he brings them a baby. And so there's a whole comedic element that goes on that I don't want to drag out, but that goes on there. So if you ever read it, it's a fantastic moment with she finally decides that she likes Fritz enough that she feels that he wants to have a baby with her. So she writes a letter to the stork, and there's a whole comical thing that goes on that really doesn't pan out the way that you think it's going to happen. But
so it's not a Disney thing where they just kiss and she's instantly pregnant?
No, exactly. So, well, and then later on a helicopter flight to foil the well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyway, what happens, though, is the villains in this thing realize that they can do more than what they're doing, that they actually can have control and actually do things that can have effect for them, benefiting them.
They can do more than just be subverted.
Angel Falls has I can't remember what they called her, like a ward or somebody that watches over her finances, kind of her guardian, and his name is Mr. Weasley. Well, there's also this guy that is always trying to take Angel Falls hostage in order to get her prize money because she frequently wins this race. And his name is the Masked Weasel. And the only people that realize that the Masked Weasel and Mr. Weasley are the one and the same are Fritz and the Doctor. And so there's this whole comedic thing when Angie figures out that Mr. Weasley is actually the Masked Weasel, and then, of course, they have a falling out. So she becomes even closer to Fritz. And at one point, the Green Ghost, I can't remember his name, but the Green Ghost, the Masked Weasel, and the Duck from the Wacky Racers race decide to get together, and they're going to dominate the world, so they're going to hold the world hostage. But what they do is they kidnap Fritz at one point, and they ask him, they're like basically trying to get out of him what villains do in his world. And so he gives them ideas about, well, there's always this big lair, and there's always it's always protected by sharks. There's always a countdown to an A-bomb that's going to be set off in a city. So he basically inadvertently gives them an idea of what they're going to do. So as the town is starting to fall apart and Boss Dog is trying to keep things under control, they get a message from the villains that say, if you don't deliver so much money, like $1 million or whatever, to us at this point, we're going to bomb the town with an A-bomb. So the Doctor and Fritz decide that they have to go out and thwart this attempt. Meanwhile, Jasper's being put on trial, so the Doctor has to go there and act as a lawyer for Jasper and convince the town that what he has done is probably bad, but it's because of events that have happened and they've set in play free will. There has to be, there are consequences to this, but maybe this is a learning point for their new society that's being developed. Anyway, so the comedy of it all is the fact that at one point the Doctor realizes that in order to save Fritz from the villains, he first of all realizes that he can turn on a TV in his hotel room and find out at any time what's going on anywhere because there's a new newscaster that will tell you what's going on at any time. And he also finds out that in this world, all you have to do is find out where they are. They cut to that scene on the TV, and you can step through the TV and be at the location where they are. The other thing he realizes is that the Doctor's brilliant in this. It is for as oddball as this story is, the Doctor is written like the Eighth Doctor. It's so Steve Lyons, who's the author of this, by the way, has the Eighth Doctor down. It's wonderfully written for his part.
Now,
but what
is it a Dr. Light story?
No,
because
it's not.
he's in
I'm
the hotel
saying
room
there's
a
not.
little bit,
That's just it. I'm really kind of underscoring the Doctor here because he is doing a lot. Really,
okay.
It's really Fritz's story, and I guess I would say it's a little Dr. Light, but the Doctor has his own thing going on. There is a good probably fourth. I wouldn't even say fourth. A sixth of the first part of the book where the Doctor is recovering. We don't get a lot of Doctor. But the Doctor in this one is really kind of the voice of reason. He's the one that goes off to deal with Boss Dog and try to help the townspeople when they're actually at one point rioting. And there's a really sad moment where there's a big riot in the street in front of the jail. And the Doctor is trying to subdue the crowd, essentially, by talking them through it. And it gets out of hand and gets really violent. And the Boss Dog's nephew actually ends up dying. He ends up getting a safe dropped on him and dies in the alleyway, which is it's a really solemn moment. And so the doctor has to deal with that. And, of course, Boss Dog still, even after this has happened, is still adamant that these things have to get back to normal. And it's just and there's a reason for that pans out later why he's very adamant about this. But anyway, but the comical moment is the doctor decides to go save Fritz, and what happens is there's the three here, and they've got Fritz, and there's a cliff. And the doctor says he has a pie gun that he's holding on them. And when they realize that there, of course, free will is happening, they realize that the pies can't really hurt them. They can't really thwart them much. So when the doctor feels that they could be threatened at this point, he tells Fritz to close his eyes. And Fritz says, why? He says, because we're going to make an escape, but I need you to close your eyes. And Fritz says, why? I don't understand. He says, you just have to do it. So throughout the course of this, there's kind of the idea, the perspective you get is from Fritz, and he feels like they're at one point just floating. And he doesn't realize what's going on. And when the doctor finally tells him to open his eyes, they're on the other side of this cliff, and the villains are on the other side of this cliff, across this ravine. And so as they realize what has happened, they start to walk out over this ravine, and they fall. And the doctor has realized that through the physics of this world, even the humans that have landed here can still utilize it to their benefit, but they have to believe that they can. And that if Fritz had not believed, that's why he has him close his eyes, because if Fritz he didn't trust would have been able to believe that, and they would have plummeted to their deaths.
So this is an instance of, I don't believe in gravity, therefore it doesn't affect me.
Nice. Because the doctor, that's the beauty of this, is the doctor has realized the limitations of the physics of this world very early on. And it's very Eighth Doctor to kind of come up with those kind of things and just realize these things and just go along with it. That's the beauty of it all, is the fact the doctor goes along. Anyway, there's a whole thing that goes on in a volcano, and they go in there, and Fritz and Angel Falls, on their way in the helicopter, Fritz tries to introduce Angie into what sex is, which is very on Doctor Who. But the beauty of it is that they kind of cut away to later, and they're both sitting kind of back to back with these expressions on their faces like they can't believe what just happened. And it's more Fritz because they don't have sex on this world. They're not anatomically correct. So Angel didn't have the right parts, and Angel's never seen the part that she got to see. So it was. I mean, it's done very tastefully. It's a wonderfully funny moment. They get into the thing. There's this countdown continually going on, and when it gets to 0, it goes 0, 0. 0, because Fritz failed to tell him what happens when the countdown ends at 0. It's just little things like that. One of the beauty, the Mass Weasel sort of comes around and realizes that he doesn't want to be a villain anymore, and there's a turn there in the story as well. The beauty of it is when the A bomb goes off, all these little A's just start popping out of it. Anyway, so what happens is Angie has met up again with the Scooby crew, and they every time they go somewhere spooky, their van breaks down every time. Well, they're starting to realize that there's something here going on too, but they decide to explore this house that is typically guarded by a caretaker, and the caretaker actually runs out of the house and says, this place is haunted, which is odd because it's usually the caretaker that is creating the haunting so to keep people away, and that's what has always happened in the past. But he even runs out, and he's afraid. So anyway, there's a whole Scooby Gang thing going on there. We have this whole Scooby-Doo, basically mini episode happening in this house with them being chased by the monsters that are in this house. There's a wonderful scene where they stumble across the Daphne and Fred character in a closet trying to do their thing, and they realize that they can't. So there's another funny moment of that. But
did they get a scene in a hallway full of doors?
They do. Oh. And then it's funny because it's all this is the beauty of it. It's from Angie's perspective. So it's Angie's perspective. So as she runs out one door and she runs through another one in the same room that's on the opposite side of the room, she comes out in the same hallway, and she's like, "Wait a minute, how does this? What?" And so she goes through another door. She goes through the opposite door of that room, and she comes out in the same hallway. And she's like perplexed. How could this possibly be happening? And there's at one point where she's trying to figure out how the physics of this is working when she looks down the hall, and the Scooby Gang are all getting their instruments out. And she's like, what are you doing? And they go, well, we always play music during the chase. It's these wonderful moments. But anyway, I don't know that I want to give away the finale of this, because I have spoiled a lot of this, which, by the way, we didn't give the spoiler warning before this, but I have spoiled a lot of this book because of the wonderful moments in this, but I don't think I want to spoil the very, very final thing. I'll tell you guys off mic if you guys want to know later about what ends up. There's really a really big reveal at the end of this of why this world is the way it is and what has happened here. But it's a wonderfully written story, and I recommend it to anybody, because I think there are a lot of fans that would have done the same thing and picked this up and said, I don't know if this is one of the ones I want to read. It just seems too odd. And it is very odd, and it feels very un-Doctor Who. But the beauty of it is that this Eighth Doctor is written so well, and it's grounded so well from the Doctor's perspective, and from the companions are written so well, and from their perspective, that it almost makes the what happens on this world seem plausible. Does that make sense? Even though we're in a cartoon world, and when I read the book, I never imagined that when they stepped out, that you could see two-dimensional, animated, really bright colors. That there might have been a meld between the two, that maybe it was really a pig that was walking upright, but it wasn't necessarily like animated that you would necessarily see on a cartoon. Does that make sense? Does that?
As you describe this, I envision more like one of the newer Looney Tune movies.
Yes,
where we've
maybe.
got these animated characters interacting with the real world, but nobody references the fact that they're animated.
Exactly.
They just are.
And the shadowing on them are done in such a way that they almost look, I don't want to say photorealistic, but they look like they could be a solid three-dimensional character, but they are animated type
So
thing.
it's like talking chipmunks.
It's sort of how I imagine.
Not necessarily
maybe
computer-generated,
that far, maybe not that far.
But more of an ink and paint than a cell.
Right,
style.
exactly.
Okay.
More ink and paint than cells. So that was kind of the way. But I highly recommend this Eighth Doctor adventure to anybody, because it is a lot of fun. It is well written, and Stephen Lyons. Yeah, Stephen Lyons has the character of the Doctor down to a T. So if you enjoy Paul McGann, you completely can picture Paul McGann playing this part. There's no way in the world you could ever do this on screen. There's no way. You couldn't even do it. To me, Roger Rabbit style. You couldn't pull this off. But as a story that you're visioning in your mind, it's a fun story. I will warn you, it gets dark and gruesome at points, but it's a necessary dark and gruesomeness in order to drive home a point that they really do drive home in the book, and it's a wonderful read, and I totally recommend it.
So it sounds a little bit like if you had to put a one-sentence encapsulated review on it, it's Pleasantville meets Galaxy Quest.
Sure. Yeah. I would go with that.
Okay.
Yeah. That's a very good description of it.
I don't know if I would have gone with Pleasantville, but
just the influence of an outside character that suddenly changes the
Okay,
the
maybe
television
I
world
wouldn't
you're
have
in.
gone with Galaxy Quest. Maybe I would have gone with
Well, I think
Pleasantville
he's
with
going
Who
with
Frames Roger Rabbit.
Well, but
because
the
of
thing
the
is-
animated aspects.
Well,
the
with a
caricatures.
touch of, I see where he's going with Galaxy Quest, though, is because it's a television show that's influencing reality, and it's like stepping into a television show.
For
essentially,
all those moments,
Okay.
like the clock that when they turn off the self-destruct. Why did it go all the way to 1 after we turn it off at 7? It always goes down to 1.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
That's sort of
those kinds of moments that are.
Why are there big crunchy things in
The
this?
scene
Who
was
designed
totally
this?
written.
Exactly.
Okay, I can see that.
because that's how they designed them.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
So it's The Crooked World by Steve
The
Lyons.
Crooked World by Steve Lyons, and I highly recommend it. Eighth Doctor.
For the record, according to what am I on? DoctorWhoGuide.com/books. There is a whole slew of Eighth Doctor books. I had no idea there was this many of them, and The Crooked World falls somewhere about 17 from the end of the line.
Yeah, I knew it was towards
17 from the end.
From the end.
Yeah.
And there's many before it, so
Wow.
it's not even the halfway point. I mean, there's a bunch of them.
It's like the 3/4 point.
And should I say
Ish.
that the first one in that line is the 8 Doctors, which I will review next, and I'm not going to do it now, but that'll be my next because I've already read it as well, and it's a fantastic read.
Gosh darn it, Glenn! I'm not going to get to read an 8th Doctor novel next. Are you kidding me?
Hey, you can do it. I can do it down the line, but don't do the 8 Doctors.
But don't do the 8 Doctors. All right. Well, going
darn! Glenn will have to reread the eight Doctors.
Let me think. I have to reread a book I liked. Darn.
Up next, Only Human. Somebody's interfering with time. The Dr. Rose and Captain Jack arrive on modern-day Earth to find the culprits and discover a Neanderthal man 28,000 years after his race became extinct. Only a trip back to the primeval dawn of humanity can solve the mystery. Who are the mysterious humans from the distant future now living in that distant past? What hideous monsters are trying to escape from behind the gray door? Is Rose going to end up married to a caveman? Caught between 3 very different types of human beings, past, present, and future. The Dr. Rose and Captain Jack must learn the truth behind the Ostenberg experiment before the monstrous Hybractors escape to change humanity's history forever.
Da-na-na.
Really?
I'm glad because I have to let a little thing out here. I have read both of these books now
So
this
have
week
I.
alone, and because I was catching up, and I thought that was the no. I would have given that book. Sorry.
Your da-na-na would have been different.
I think it would have been a little better.
A little better than
Oh, granted, this cliffhanger is kind of
This is not a very good cover blurb, quite honestly. But
It's not. No,
I don't think I would have picked this book up.
well, that's just it too. Quite honestly, where we came from. So we go from the 8th Doctor's era to the 9th. This is a book that features
And this
the Doctor
is the 5th novel.
as portrayed by Christopher Eccleston and his companion Rose. Obviously, Captain Jack's along, so it's set sometime after.
It's set before Boomtown.
Yeah, well,
I
I
can tell
got
you
the
that.
impression it's right after.
I don't know how right after, because
there's one
they're...
book in front of it.
Well, with Captain Jack, okay. I got the impression it's set from TV series wise. It's almost immediately following on the heels of Empty Child Doctor Dances because of the relationship that Jack has with
There
him.
is
But-
one book in between there.
Okay.
Yeah.
but Empty Child Doctor Dances goes right into Boomtown, right?
No.
No, there's a story in between?
There's 2. There's this one and one
No,
before
I mean
that.
televised.
Well,
Televised,
televised,
there
right.
is no.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, that's where these two...
So that's where they would
Yeah.
nestle
Yeah.
in there. But you're right. I mean, I looked at it, and I picked this one up just from the standpoint of I knew Glenn was doing an 8th Doctor story. I knew you were doing a 10th Doctor story. So I thought, well, I want a 9th Doctor, so we can go 8, 9, 10, because that's the way my brain works. And so I went to the library and did some shopping and looked at this one and really wasn't all that excited about it, other than the fact that, well, Captain Jack's in it, so that's a plus, and it's written by Gareth Roberts.
Which,
you know,
I applaud him.
that's always a plus, I think, because apparently I get him confused with somebody else. So
He did write Shut Up.
He did write Shut Up, but which we can't review yet. So we
But I
open.
have read. Don't go into that too much.
Yeah.
But I've read it.
we open with a fairly standard. We're in the TARDIS and something bad is happening. The time distortions. We have to go track this down. Okay, it's a distress call. Some wonderful dialogue when Jack is the one who actually points out, what's this? There's a flashing light here on the console, and the Doctor's like, oh, you're still here? Remind me to engage the parental control locks. Eccleston really sounded like
Yes.
Eccleston for the majority of the book, I thought, in this. Eccleston's Doctor, anyway. A lot of his scenes were very, very, very well written. And they had him saying things with the attitude and portrayed in the way that I would have expected him to have done this story had it been done as a television episode. Captain Jack was also pretty good. Especially, well, we get down and we discover that somebody has been using what they call a rip engine that is basically a very primitive, very dirty time machine. And they track it down and discover that apparently there is a Neanderthal man on present-day Earth. And we don't really get to know what present day this is, but yeah, it's fairly
Rose's.
close.
It's Rose's time.
It's fairly
Rose's
close
time,
to right.
yeah.
Well, yeah, you're right, because of the one scene that happens later.
Right.
Well, they reference even. Oh, look, we're going through your time.
Yeah. Well, but to Captain Jack, anything in the
That's
the
true.
21st century was Rose's time, the whole thing.
Well, regardless, 21st century is still a.
At any rate,
Continue.
there's a scene later that does clarify it. But so they go down and they
Forgot about that.
Yeah, so that was one of the really great
It was
ones.
a nice nugget.
So they go down and they are dealing with, we've got to break this whatever he is. He's probably lost. He's probably confused and alone. And if he really is a Neanderthal, I mean, if he's from prehistoric past, we've got a pretty major problem because he's going to be terrified and lost and all kinds of stuff. And the doctor's like, we've got to help him. So we need a distraction. Jack, that's your job. Come up with a distraction. And Jack just grins and says, all right, biggest distraction you've ever seen. He promptly strips naked and begins hooping and hollering, running around the hotel and luring people away. Or the hospital, not the hotel. Luring people away from the hospital. And to which the doctor looks and says, that's not the biggest distraction I've ever seen. Again, just that relationship that Jack and the doctor have is nailed. So they bust the guy out of the hospital and going to take him home. Well, because the RIP engine is such a not good time machine, it's barely usable as a time machine. In fact, the doctor comments that Jack's
Vortex
manipulator is a better way to travel than this thing. And apparently it's damaged the Neanderthal cells. He can't go home. He's stuck in present day. And this is where I actually thought the book started to go on this not-so-cool trend. Because it was fun to have the TARDIS crew together and Team TARDIS solving the mystery and going to do this thing. Well, then it's like, okay, well, we can't take the Neanderthal home, so what do we do? Well, we're going to have to set him up here. He's got to stay in the present. Jack, that's your responsibility. So they foist this guy off on Captain Jack and say, here's a credit card with billions of dollars. You go deal with it. It's a psychic.
It was only 500,000.
Well, it was a psychic credit card.
Yeah,
I thought it was
it
a
could be
million.
rechargeable. No, I think it was 500,000, but it was rechargeable.
Yeah.
Whatever it was.
Regardless,
It was
psychic credit card.
Right.
Jack was
Exactly.
excited, and he's like, I've been looking for one. He goes, yes, I bet you have. They foist this guy off on Jack, and it's his responsibility to set him up in present day, while the Doctor and Rose travel back to prehistoric times to find out what the heck is going on. Now, I was disappointed in this because Jack's one of my favorite characters, and now we've kind of left him. He gets thrown by the wayside. He does report in. We get a couple little snippets of him from both Daz, was that his name?
Daz. Yeah.
Who's the Neanderthal, and his point of view as shows what he's learning. And those were kind of interesting, really. I mean, they broke up the narrative flow of the story because you're going along learning about the mystery that they're involving in the past. And then all of a sudden there's a break, and Daz has got this, this is what I did this week book report that he turns in, and it's just kind of random. But seeing the world through his eyes was kind of interesting because he wasn't the terrified Neanderthal. He wasn't the having trouble to adapt. There were things that he didn't get and things that he didn't understand, but mostly it was things like, why don't you hunt? Why do you lounge around and do nothing?
What's a lie?
What is a lie? I don't get that. And Jack gives him a TV and says, well, here, watch this. This will explain some of your questions. Well, then, because he doesn't get lying, he doesn't get acting. So he thinks everything he sees on TV is real, which led to some humorous moments. But, and then there's a report from Jack going, oy vey, I can't believe that I've got to do this. So those moments were cute, but not necessarily... didn't really move anything forward on the overall story. They kind of pointless. Well,
Yeah.
they solidified what happened to Daz, which if we're going to leave him stuck there, it's nice to have that resolution as opposed to just dropping a plot thread.
That, yeah.
Meanwhile, the Doctor and Rose land in the prehistoric past, where nothing is what you would have thought. It's not Terra Nova. It's not Jurassic Park. It's not... It's this weird... People are running around, and they're like, hey, what's up? And then they meet Neanderthals, and they're like, hey, what's up? And then they meet pro-magna human, and they're like, hey, what's up?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like... Is the TARDIS translating for everybody?
That's what I assumed.
I just kind of assumed that, but everybody had this weird...
I was okay with that.
Blasé
The fact that it
attitude
was
about it.
that it was a translation. I didn't have a problem with the fact that they were hearing it. I did have a prejudice that was just this kind of like it could have been in any century. I mean, it was
Exactly.
Just, yeah,
It didn't matter.
Before you go on, my biggest was the Neanderthals. Yeah, they established, okay, this is how Neanderthals speak. The TARDIS is translating. But then there's the other guy who's carrying on with these Neanderthals. How did he understand them to begin with? That's what I never thought.
There's a point where he talks about he was implanted by a translation.
Oh,
chip.
I missed that part.
He got
Okay.
implanted with a translation chip.
So never mind.
That's right, because he makes a comment to Rose that she probably won't understand.
Yeah.
And she ends up understanding, and then the reason being is because the TARDIS is translating
The TARDIS
for her.
translating for her. So what it winds up being is that there's a group of humans who have come back into the past from the future in order to
Even future from Rose's
time, right? Rose's in the present. This is the far future, where they've come back into the past to explore and learn and do all this kind of stuff. But they live in a wooden town, and they have not even really steampunk technology. It's this kind of very strange crossbreed of
Analog.
Everything is
it's
considered
analog
analog
technology.
And the doctor explains that, well, what happened was that there was this, I don't know, EMP pulse that wound up happening that obliterated every digital record of everything. Anything with a computer chip in it, fried, and was unusable.
Which was pretty much everything at that point.
At that point, toothbrushes had it. I mean, so everything suddenly became unusable, and the Earth went through a dark age. And when they emerged on the other side, they kind of rebuilt their technology, but did it all analog-wise. It's I kind of equated it to the Futurama episode where Bender downgrades and becomes a wooden robot.
Yeah. Well, to me, it reminded me of very early industrial. Not even steampunk, but like early
in some
industrial
ways.
analog.
Almost pre-industrial.
Maybe, yeah, pre-industrial. Well, early industrial, like on the verge of industry before.
Yeah.
So we've got this kind of whole, and that was a fascinating idea. I don't know that it was as developed as well as I would have liked.
It wasn't explored. I thought the same thing.
Really, it's like when he started to set it up.
We are so on the same page with this book.
When he started to set it up, I was really getting excited. Even though it was going to require some exposition, I was ready for it. And then we got just enough to kind of fill us in on the broad strokes of what was going on, and then it was dropped. This society got very adept at brain mapping and kind of figuring out where things were going with the human body. And so everybody is on happy pills. I mean, they dial in different combinations of drugs to deal with any situation that comes up. And they've pretty much removed all the humanity from the humans. They're very, very doped up.
Been there, done that.
THX 1138 versions of themselves.
Been there, done that, yep.
And again, been there, done that. So then we finally meet Chantel. And Chantel is the leader of this group. And there's a blurb early. I mean, it's the first page of the book with a young Chantel. And I'll be honest, I didn't put two and two together. I didn't realize it was the same person until well into the story.
Yeah, it threw me off, too, yeah.
The blurb at the beginning was creepy.
And completely out of place.
And
It felt out of place.
But it felt out of place. It makes sense later. But it was creepy and fascinating. And what an idea. And it was the 7-year-old Chantel talking about the cat pissed on the rug, and, well, I took it apart and fixed it. So that won't do that anymore. And I showed it to Mom and Dad, and they were upset, and then the cat got away. But since I fixed it so that it can reproduce on its own, I figure it'll take care of itself. And it's just like, oh, you're that kid.
Creepy.
Okay, we have problems. But
You're the Sheldon Cooper.
Yeah, well, ratcheted up to 11 with a slightly evil bent. The reveal here is that Chantel apparently has brought all of these people back in time, not to study. She could really care less about the studying. What she's doing is she's setting everything up because she has bioengineered a new life form, a human 2.0. Although she doesn't call it a human 2.0. She calls it a hybractal.
Yeah, human 2.0 would have implied there was digital involved.
Yeah. Because
they don't have digital.
It's an analog update of a human. And she's planning on breeding them, turning them loose on prehistoric Earth, and allowing them to conquer the planet and wipe out all the humans, whether it's human or Neanderthal or whatever. It doesn't matter. They're going to.
They're the next.
They're the
species.
the next new thing, and completely justified in her mind with the reason for doing this because, well, humans are inefficient, and this is the way it's going to be now. And what was the quote that you had that you wrote down? You almost used it as an open. The book.
This is the Psychopath's Guide to Career Building?
Yes. That kind of sums her up. Yeah. Right there. So now this is where I thought the book, and you would ask me, have you got to that one part yet? And I'm like, well, which? And you said, well, it kind of gets gruesome. And I went, oh, that part. So again, and it sounds weird. I sound like Mary Whitehouse when I complain about things like this. Chantel sends somebody down. Hey, can you go down and check the gray door? Oh, sure. Now, never mind the fact that the last 4 people that went down to check the gray door never came back.
But she's so doped up.
But she convinces everybody they have.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they were at the party last week.
Well, and the fact that she doesn't recognize it because it's not revealed until later that the drugs are running out.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and so, but because they're all doped up, because she gets down there and the door gives her a creepy feeling. So she dials in another drug combination and suddenly is like, I don't care that it gives me a creepy combination. And the door opens and the voice says, come on in. Everything's fine. And what does she do? She goes in. And then this creature bites her head off. And it was kind of like, whoa, really?
I'm sorry. Before we go on, did you guys kind of vision Grendel from the more recent Beowulf?
That's exactly what I pictured.
Yeah. Maybe less lumpy.
To a T, that is what I pictured.
But with 6 fingers.
Yeah. Well, I didn't go into that.
No, they described 6 fingers coming out of the door.
Yeah, they had 6 fingers.
Yeah, just it was a Grendel.
Yeah.
So the doctor realizes what's going on, and so he starts putting plans in motion to stop this horrendous, you can't alter the history of everything, and tries to stop it, and winds up getting captured and doped up himself, which I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about that.
It's so funny, though.
But, oh, my God, it was funny. Because
it's so well written.
He's doped up, and he's happy, and he's telling Chantel everything about, oh, yeah, I've got a time machine, I've got this, I've got 2 hearts. And she goes, yeah, I know, I'm holding one of them. Because apparently she's dissected him.
That was so weird.
Oh, wow.
She says, your heart's running slow. And I'm like, because you don't know that he's on the operating table
big
at this
surprise
point.
There.
And he says, which one? And she says, well, this one here.
And she shows
it to him. And I thought, oh, please put that back where it goes. Sorry, go ahead.
So he keeps fighting against it. His body's going, there's something important you need to do. There's something important you need to do. You need to be clever. You need to be this. You need to do that. I don't really care.
What do you say? One thought every 3 minutes is not work.
Yeah,
every 30 seconds.
One thought every 30 seconds. Who does this?
One thought every 30 seconds. Who does this?
Well, he eventually winds up overthrowing the programming and kind of coming out of the stupor and realizes that he's got several different things going on. He's got to stop Chantel. He's got to try and save everybody in this town, this wooden town that's hidden at the center of the earth.
Let alone the entire earth.
Meanwhile, Rose has managed to separate herself from the group, and she goes up to visit Neanderthal village and has a wonderful little scene with the Neanderthals and how cute and fluffy they are, and they're not so bad and not very much different from us. And then they're attacked
by giving birth.
They're giving birth, and look at that. And then we're attacked by the uncaring, unfeeling humans, and she gets nabbed and put a bag over her head and taken to their village. And then it turns out that, well, they're not really so bad either. They're just attacking people for the heck of it. It's not that there's really any malice behind it. They're just... Yeah,
that's different.
That's what we do. We attack what we don't understand.
It becomes a race war.
It really does.
We just attack what we don't understand.
But it's not a race war in the, it's not a Ku Klux Klan race war. It's just a Ku Klux Klan. No. It's just a...
They're different than us, so
they set forth that...
It's a species divide.
It's a species war, not a race war.
Yeah. Well, but it's just...
because Neanderthals aren't humans.
It's almost treated with such blasé, but we didn't have anything better to do today, so we thought we'd go down and raid the Neanderthal camp and kill most of them. Yeah. I mean, it's bizarre. Well, the only way for her to get out of this situation is to wind up marrying the chieftain's son.
Grandson.
Or grandson.
And she has to marry him so that they will believe that they're in danger.
Because they don't believe that they're in danger from these things that are coming out of the ground. And, well, if I was one of the tribe, you'd believe me, right? Okay, let's get married.
Well, and there's part of her that's attracted to him, too.
Oh, yeah.
Early on, yeah.
Early on. I mean, he's not a bad-looking guy for early... I mean, I imagine the image I got was Tarzan. He's kind of got the built physique.
Yeah.
And Rose is very much like, yeah, okay. Wow, I have to marry you? It's not how it's done in my time, but okay. And that was something that I thought was very kind of... that kind of went against type for Rose. It was a little too convenient for her to fall into it and go, yeah, all right, whatever, I'll marry you. But
the entire time, she also had the plan of, okay, I'll play along until I can get a chance to escape.
Yeah. So they go through that. The doctor winds up... The creatures get loose, eat everybody in town with... Again, kind of some humorous, dark humor going on because Chantel's giving them the marching orders, and it's kill all humans. except for me.
But they don't know what humans
the
are.
doctor.
They can't tell what humans are.
But they haven't learned yet. They're still developing. So they're walking up to people in the street going, "Are you human?" "Yes." "Okay." And they eat them.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, okay.
And then they stack their bones
Yeah,
nicely.
They make a nice little pile. They're very clean monsters. They're very neat. But it's a little off. It's a little dark. And so we flee that. We kind of save the humans, and we've kind of sort of saved what was left of the Neanderthals, but not really. They got pretty well massacred anyway. We get back down into the town, and we're captured again. And we come to, and the doctor's about to be re-drugged and kind of under the influence, and we realize that Rose is being threatened now. This is how Chantel's going to get her
really
revenge.
Odd moment.
Isn't this some weird left turn that the book took at this point?
Surrealism here.
That she's like, "You're going to give me the secrets of time travel. We're going to leave in your TARDIS, and everything's going to be hunky-dory, or else this is going to happen to Rose." And we realize that Chantel, being the bioengineer that she is, has severed Rose's head.
And put her body in a cabinet.
Her body's locked in the cabinet. Not even locked. She just put her in the cupboard. But her head's in a jar, apparently, sitting over here on the shelf talking.
Not even in a jar, because Rose picks her up
it up.
and just carries it around.
I had a Futurama moment again. It was like, what? So, I don't know if I want to go too far into the. There's really not a surprise at the end of the book.
There isn't.
There's really not. It's all wrapped up in a nice little bow.
That's the big problem. The Doctor, in order to save everything and stop these creatures, very quickly bioengineers something himself.
That was
Now it was cool because it was Doctor-like. It was
fire.
It was very much.
It was very Russell T Davies wrapped this up.
Well, the Doctor doing something scientific in a lab brought
clever.
me back to
That was
Pertwee.
great. Yeah,
I mean,
no,
it kind of
absolutely.
reminded me of that. But the fact that it's an airborne dispersal, he runs up to the surface, disperses it, and apparently it magically goes all over the planet really quick. And then both the Neanderthals and the humans can suddenly breathe fire.
And Rose.
And Rose.
Well, she's
Rose's
human,
head.
too, yeah,
can
Rose's
breathe
head
fire.
breathes fire.
And it eliminates the hybractyls.
That's
and they're
what
dead.
I absolutely did not like about this was the culmination of how we got rid of them.
And that's the end of the menace. I mean, that was it. And then the Doctor kind of sort of figures out a way with some help to put Rose's body back together.
It happens to be one of the sub-characters in this who is dying, and she's starting to really... Yeah, I mean, there's a
little bit of a subplot there, but not
fortunately,
much.
there is somebody that can fix Rose's ailment.
So we've eliminated the threat to humankind. We've gotten rid of all the monsters. We've fixed Rose. Chantel, of course, winds up being ripped apart by her own time engines. The dirty
because she
rip
decides
engine.
that she's going to...
she's going to go back and try again.
Yeah.
But once you've used this thing,
Because
you can't travel in time again.
She has the same problem that Daz has
Right.
in the future.
So she gets ripped apart by that. And then the humans and the Neanderthals kind of wind up integrating into one tribe, so we get a happy ending there.
That's why the Neanderthals have all but gone from the human history, because
They were all gone.
they integrated
with the humans. But then, we come back, we pick up Captain Jack, and Daz apparently has found a girl who's, from all accounts in the book, fugly.
Which is funny because she's got a sister who's gorgeous.
Yeah.
And he ends up picking the ugly one. And I love the dad's reaction that he never thought.
He just grabbed a hold of Daz and hugged him and cried.
Never thought he'd ever find anybody.
So,
That was
we get
You're
back.
cracking all the heck over there, Keith.
What?
You're crackling all the heck over there.
Oh, he's eating.
Keith's eating his pepperoni stick.
So, but we come
my
back for the
wrap-up.
wedding of Daz, who's decided that maybe he can live in the 21st century because it's not all that different, and everything's hunky dory. And it was a very, like I said, it felt like the Doctor in a very not Doctor Who story.
Yeah,
the dealing with the
same way with
Neanderthal
Cricket World
stuff, and
is they got the Doctor down.
The Doctor was down. But I'm not saying that it wasn't enjoyable to read. It was a very quick read once you dedicate yourself. Because I haven't been able to do that in a while. But you dedicate yourself to it, and I blew through it in an afternoon and a half. I mean, it's not a bad read at
I
all.
think it only took me 2.5 days.
I read it in 6 hours.
Yeah, I mean, if you can sit down and read it, and it's only, I don't know, what is it, 260, 250.
Oh, is it 250?
250 pages. So
See,
I mean,
I got the copy, the ebook copy online, and it's 160 something.
But it just didn't feel like a very Doctor Who story. And then when we got into the meat of it, they did some very weird un-Doctor Who things. And I know that almost sounds like an idiosyncrasy because it's Doctor Who. Anything can happen.
Right.
I mean, we've had flying sharks for Pete's sake, but it just.
I guess that's why I didn't have much of a problem with it.
There's always a. There's
I
always
can't put
an
my finger
error.
on it.
Yeah, there's always an error. Well, I think the other thing you have to look at when you go into books is books can expound on a story so much more than 45 minutes of a
Right.
television series. And so it's even more obvious when you're reading a book that has to do with the Ninth Doctor or the 10th Doctor, because you're so used to the 45-minute format. And when a story becomes what feels longer or more epic than the 45-minute format, it automatically has an air of not quite feeling like the New Who that we're used to. But on the flip side of that, the situations that they're put in are broadened out so much in this book particularly that it just almost has even more of a foreign feel to it than Doctor Who.
That's one of the things that as an avid Star Trek book reader, that's one of the things that has always bothered me is if I read a line, I mean, because you grow up with these characters and you know who these people are and you can tell how they'd react in things. And if you give me one line of dialogue from a character that doesn't ring true, you've completely
lost me for the whole book.
destroyed the whole book. And I never got that moment with the characters.
No,
they
absolutely
were,
not.
they were
I
written
would agree.
very, very well, and that's probably a very impressive thing from Gareth Roberts' standpoint, because I imagine at the time that this came out, he may have only had
A handful.
up
to Boomtown.
Well, he may not have even had that, because I think it was published shortly around the same time that, I mean, it was released September of 2005. So, I mean, it's
wow.
right during the run of the show. So he probably only had scripts to go off of, and maybe some handful of notes from Moffat about what's going on with some of this stuff and RTD. But
he clearly had the character down.
But he clearly had the characters down, and so that aspect of it was kind of like, oh, awesome, you didn't, I never had that, you ruined it for me moment. Mm-hmm. But then the plot gets so bizarrely strange as we went through
really
it. It kind of almost became a plot story that you ruined it for me. So it was kind of a
Despite
weird
the
one.
plot issues, this, for me, was a book where it makes me wish we had more Ninth Doctor.
I'll agree with that.
Because he was so good in the story.
Mm-hmm.
I'll agree with that. This would be one of those that, well, like you guys I know don't like Boomtown, that even though you may not
I
like
liked
the story,
Boomtown.
or you didn't like Boomtown.
Right.
This would be one of those that even
Boomtown's
if you
fine,
didn't
I'm just
like
not a big fan.
Boomtown, you still liked the Ninth Doctor in it.
Yeah.
So this, I agree with you on that. And
That's
like I
the
said,
same.
it's not
It's
that it
the
was a
same for me.
bad book. It's not that it was a bad story at all. I enjoyed the read.
And there was
But
a lot of humorous moments.
There was a
in
lot
it.
of humor in it. It was a very light touch dealing with some of these gruesome moments too. It just was a little bit of an odd book.
And I thought it was a bit heavy-handed.
Yeah.
It's another story where humans suck.
It can be very preachy at times. Yeah.
I think it's another trope that they use is the humans essentially stripping all of their own emotions because they're using these dopamines, they're using these drugs that are basically doping them into suppression of their feelings, and that's something that's been tried and true many times over. And so I felt like that was already used as well. This was a neat turn on that kind of thing, having a pack that you essentially
and the
wear on
idea
yourself
that they were
you
running
dial
out.
in. Yeah. And the idea, yes, absolutely. The
if
idea
they had capitalized on that would have been great. You really could have done this story and not done any of the Neanderthal man stuff. They could have landed in the future during this time frame and dealt with an outpost that's isolated and we're running out of drugs and what do we do now? That would have been a really interesting story. Instead, it's a footnote because we've got to get back to the prehistoric stuff. And the prehistoric stuff really is kind of what didn't really work for me. I was
agree.
very interested
Most of
in
Rose's story in this.
Yeah,
Once
Rose-
she runs off from the Doctor, I'm like, I don't care. Get back to the Doctor or even get back to Daz and Captain Jack.
See, I didn't have that feeling with Rose. I kind of enjoyed Rose's story. My biggest problem was the fact that we've got Daz and Captain Jack in the future. All we're getting is what they call data recorder entries or data something
diary entries.
basically diaries from each other perspective, which were fun on their own, but they were unnecessary. And we had such wonderful moments with Jack at first when we're in the 21st century, and then suddenly he gets just relegated to this side plot that it really has nothing to do with anything.
Yeah, it's very abrupt.
But I
It is
like,
so
but I
abrupt,
like
and
the
I was-
Doctor's reasoning for keeping him with Daz
Yeah.
is because I don't like you.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I like Rose better.
works, but I was so sad because I really felt like
He captured-
Gareth Roberts had Captain Jack's character really well too, but then he gets segregated to this little side story that's going on in the future that isn't. I mean, again, isn't even relayed in a typical story form. It's just relayed in
It's very
perspective
shoehorned in.
from
The
And
other thing
I was really
that's-
disappointed with that.
We talk about how well he wrote Captain Jack. Now, unfortunately, he kind of wrote a stereotypical Captain
He did.
Jack.
He did. Well, he
he's
wrote early
oversexed
on-
and he's
Well,
this.
He
and he's
wrote
this.
what you
He
get
wrote-
from Empty Child and Dr.
Oh
Dance.
yeah,
Right.
he wrote
He really did.
Ninth Doctor Captain Jack.
Right, and
He doesn't-
that's fine, except for the fact that we get a little bit at the beginning when Captain Jack's present, and then he's written out of the story. But then every data entry that comes back up is kind of a reinforcement of that same character. It almost would have been better if Captain Jack hadn't come back for the story.
Yeah,
I mean,
I would agree.
I understand why he did it, because it allows him to continue to advance.
you can't
Daz,
drop that thread.
and you can't drop the thread. And it does allow Jack to kind of still have that continuing presence, even though he's not in the story. But because he's kind of just replaying the same horn dog kind of things that he did at the beginning.
See, I didn't think he was that horn dog in the data recorder. I mean, he's trying to
There's-
explain to Daz. I thought there was more to Jack in those than there was in the beginning.
Well, maybe not through Jack's data recorder, but through Daz's data recorder.
Daz is the
I
observer
guess I
of
consider
it.
the
Yeah,
two
he
of them
sees it.
together
He sees it.
because
so.
it's often
So-
just Daz's point of view and Jack's.
Yeah.
Like I said, I mean, based on the cover blurb and this is not a book that I would have picked up and gone, oh, I'm really excited about this one. But now that I've read it, I mean, like I said, I'm not disappointed that I've read it. It was an enjoyable read.
It's one I would probably go back and reread, honestly.
See, I don't think I would. I certainly wouldn't own it. I'm glad I checked it out from the library.
See, if I found it cheap enough, I think I would own it. Like cheap enough
I
as
didn't like it that much.
No, I didn't
as
like it that
half
much either.
of list price,
All right.
So there's that. Only Human by Gareth Roberts.
as opposed to this one, The Story of Martha.
Which you wish you didn't own. Sorry, go on. I'm spoiling this
I own-
story. Keith is so vehement
Shaun,
about
I
it.
lost
He
your
just
place.
he just threw the book on the floor.
Oh, he took my bookmark out.
No.
I own half a book. Okay, The Story of Martha. For a year, while the Master ruled over the earth, Martha Jones traveled the world telling people stories about the Doctor. She told people of how the Doctor has saved them before and how he will save them again. This is that story. It tells Martha's travels from her arrival on Earth as the Troglodyte attacked and decimated the population through her return to Britain to face the Master.
Can you give us a da-da-da?
No, not
You're
yet.
not even going to give us... Oh, there's still more.
It's still there's still more. I just
my
had to
gosh.
I just had to swallow my my bile at that
Oh.
last statement. It tells how she spread the word and told people about the Doctor. The story of how she survived that terrible year. But it's more than that. This is also a collection of the stories she tells. The stories of adventures she had with the Doctor that we haven't heard about before. The stories that inspired and saved the world. Dun, dun, dun.
See, I was under the impression you liked it more than that.
I like 3/4 of this book. Enough to give it a dun-dun-dun. It's the last quarter I have issues with. The problem with this book, I'm going to get this out now, is it's half a book.
Yeah.
It's the first 6 months of her walking the earth. There's a whole 6 months. She goes to the U.S. There's all sorts of stuff that I imagine she encounters that isn't dealt with in this story. I mean, I understood they needed... Okay. Let me start from the beginning. I went back and rewatched...
No, that's too much. Let me sum up.
I went back and rewatched Utopia and The Sound of Drums before starting this story, so I was ready. And it starts, and it's fantastic. It starts with, from what I remember, and a little bit more, of the beginning of The Last of the Time Lords. And then Martha wandering off, and her realizing what she's doing is not right. That she's not being stealthy. She's not going to be able to walk the world this way. And almost encounters this group of people working for the Master, led by a man named Griffin. And all of this is fascinating. And then she meets this little girl and saves her. And tells her a story. what this is it's a story of Martha walking and her telling stories, obviously. And I found Martha walking fascinating. Of her trying to evade capture from this group of mercenaries, this group led by the man named Griffin, and everything about that. I mean, this is a hard story. This is a hard book to review.
It's hard to summarize.
It's hard to summarize. You can't go A to B, because Martha walks. She meets somebody. Something most likely happens. She almost gets captured, and then she tells a story to these people. And that is fantastic.
It's a great concept.
It's a great it's a great concept. And if he would have finished it, it would have been good. And Glenn obviously agrees with me because he's laughing.
I totally know where you're going with this, yeah.
Because she meets this girl, Alicia, and gives her... They're almost captured. This is a girl who lost both her parents through the Toclafane attacks, and she's left wandering. Martha grabs Alicia.
Should I say, the sad thing is she was with her aunt.
Yeah, and she was with her aunt to begin with.
Yeah, so mom's off shopping.
She thinks mom's still off shopping, and she's wandering looking for mom.
Yeah, that's very true.
For 2 weeks, waiting for mom to come back from the market.
And I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't know how old this girl is, but after 2 weeks, I would have realized mom's not coming back.
She was only 9.
Even at 9, I think I would have realized.
Irrational.
Anybody else picture Rue from the Hunger Games?
A little bit.
True, I hadn't thought of that. No, I didn't, but that's interesting. Yeah.
And
that's what I pictured.
And so in the beginning, this mercenary group, led by Griffin, is contacted to hunt down Martha. And he assembles this crew of the best of who he's worked with, and they're tasked with finding Martha. And so the very first part of this is Martha evading capture, her finding Alicia, her and Alicia evading capture, and the whole time her perception filter helping her throughout the entire thing. And the perception filter plays a big part in this story.
Well, I think one of the things that I want
in this entire book,
I want to expand on, because you went there, but I don't think you went deep enough, that the things that she realizes that she's doing wrong is the little girl recognizes her earrings, and that's why the girl sees her.
Yeah.
Her perfume.
She talks about her perfume, how she takes the bath, and her shoes are painful.
Yeah.
And so it's her learning, as you said, the things
that first part of this.
Yeah, and I like that about it.
And then
that goes right in with what we've always said about Martha, is how she starts off as one thing and then kind of evolves into another by the end of the
And
movie.
I think Dan Abnett captures Martha perfectly in this
I agree
entire
with that.
book. He has Martha down to a T.
He's really the only one.
I would agree.
Well, the writer of the last story, and I can't remember what it is, he had her too, but that was it. Sorry.
Well,
go on. I will.
In the story,
I keep biting my tongue because there's so much I want to say about this, but I'm sure it's a lot along the same lines that you're talking about.
Okay, so they escape from Griffin. Is it Griffin or Griffith? Griffin. I'm right.
Griffin.
Okay. They escape.
Peter Griffin.
And
I thought that the first time I read Griffin, I was like,
I didn't.
Sorry.
And they escape, and so Martha decides to tell Alicia a story to make her feel better. What a story to tell a little girl.
Thank you. So glad you said that.
Okay, here's this fantastic man. He's going to save us. I know the doctor has sent her out to tell the world about him.
The story she chose.
The story she told. Okay, the story is fantastic ideas.
It's a good idea. It's not very.
The doctor, however, in it, and in most of these, I find, isn't the doctor I expect. It's not Tenet. Regardless, they throw in brilliant to make you remember that the fact that it is Tenet, because he says brilliant so often. But this is not Tenet, especially in the story.
The first one was called The Weeping.
The Weeping. Written by David Rodden. And The Weeping tells the story of this future human civilization that set up planet next to a black hole.
Wormhole.
A wormhole. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. A wormhole. And things go awry, and things go wrong, and people start turning into these weird
Well, we don't know that until the end.
Yeah, you don't know that until the end, but things go awry, and there are these creatures that are a hodgepodge of animals.
Yeah, which we already had a little bit of a problem with.
They're beyond
animal parts.
They're Frankenstein anthropomorphized animals.
Which I had an even bigger problem with.
But they're saved by this guy who is the last one to ward people away. And, of course, the whole appeal to the doctor was stay away. Oh, well, we must go investigate.
Immediately, let's go.
Yeah. And so they show up. They meet this, after being saved by this guy, they meet him, and the doctor says, well, yeah, of course, I can save you. And so they run off, and they escape, and they get in the TARDIS, and they start to leave, and the guy starts turning into one of the creatures. And the doctor realizes, oh, wait, there's this beacon that's warning people away for a reason, and he's tied to it. And we can't stop it from happening if we leave. And at this point, it's starting to happen, and it's going to continue to happen. And he tells the guy, I can stop it from happening completely, or I can let you turn. And
But neither way he could leave.
But neither way he could leave the planet.
Right.
And there's this great emotional scene with Martha and the guy of him, I don't want to go, and then resigning to the fact. And everything with him and Martha I thought were fantastic.
Yeah, that was well done. You could tell they really had a connection.
Yeah, they did have a very good connection. And then the problem with the story is the Doctor doesn't feel like Tennant.
I would agree. It doesn't feel like the 10th Doctor.
I know I'm viewing things backwardly because this came out before Matt Smith came around. But it feels and sounds so much like Matt Smith.
Yeah, it doesn't fit 10 especially.
Yeah.
But he doesn't fit any of the modern Doctors at all.
See, I think the fact that he's constantly getting it wrong.
He makes too many stupid mistakes. But it's not even that he's getting it wrong. Because Matt Smith, he may go down the road of he hasn't quite figured things out yet. And so he's kind of stumbling his way through it. But he never makes those final decisions to do things like the Doctor does in this story.
Yeah.
He's like,
oh,
he goes
well,
into
I
it
disconnected.
not questioning why this beacon is connecting this guy to this planet in the first place. There must be a reason for it. And there's no Doctor in Doctor Who history that wouldn't have questioned that first and foremost. I'm sorry. I can't believe that. I was sitting there going, I wonder what's connecting this guy and why he has it. I'm just me.
I'm the reader.
Exactly.
You got to answer my questions.
Why isn't the Doctor questioning this? I expect the Doctor to be much more clever than me.
And that's the problem I had with this story, is that the Doctor doesn't question anything and just says, okay, let's do this. Oh, wait, no, that's not working. Oh, wait. Oh, I like the ideas of that humankind set up this planet next to a wormhole, and there's so many species or different species DNA flooding through the wormhole that it corrupted their DNA and changed them.
I like the whole,
and that he's going to turn into that.
Yeah, I like the whole lighthouse analogy too. Is the whole stay away? It's a warning. It's a beacon to keep others away from this danger, and I love that whole analogy. I love the idea that there's this one caretaker here, and he's having to deal with these creatures, and then the realization that these creatures are human, or what human used to be. This is what these humans have evolved to.
They're his people.
Exactly. I love that whole aspect. It's just the Doctor. After reading Crooked World, and after reading Only Human, where the Doctors are written so much like their characters, and then coming to this one and already having Dr. Light for the first part of this book.
This is a Dr. Light
book.
Yeah,
because it's just Martha. up until her telling this story, and then we finally get a dose of the Doctor, and it's not my doctor. And
I almost wish in this entire book there weren't stories of the Doctor. Because there are instances later on where she tells a story, but we don't get that story. And I almost wish that's what the entire book was.
Yeah. There's a couple of times where she does it.
Yeah.
She tells a story, and we don't get the story.
I'm going to chime in real quick and say now I did my homework for this week. I got my book ready.
You did. Absolutely.
I'm doing extra credit by reading Keith's book. But
did I do extra credit?
You did extra credit.
Super extra credit.
Sorry.
I got up to about the halfway
Toot
point,
my
so
own horns
I'm
here.
through that. And I kind of found the reverse to be true. I found the story of Martha walking the earth, telling other people and meeting up with these resistance groups and all that kind of stuff, to be kind of lackluster. Just because that to me was
It ends up being very lackluster.
well, and again,
That's the
keep in mind,
end.
I've only gotten up to
There's
the
the
halfway
thread.
part of the book, but because that's the framework of the story, that's the only thing that's really kind of tying all these short stories together. I'd have almost rather just had a book of short stories.
Can I add to that?
Sure.
Because there's a lot more to talk about here, and I know this is going to lend to that as well. I'm sorry. But here's the problem with this. And Keith hit it on the nail on the head earlier. Why this story for this girl?
That's
because it does not relate.
It threw
what
me
this
from the
feels like?
standpoint that Martha says, I want to tell you a story. And I thought, oh, cool. She's going to tell the story of the Doctor. And then I go to the next chapter, and all of a sudden the Doctor's there. And it's this flashback. It's a completely unrelated, unceremonious. It has nothing to do with what we've done. Now,
and that's not uncommon for this book. Later,
No, they're all like this.
well, not even that. There's Martha parts that it's like, wait, what? What did I miss?
Yeah, that's true.
I
It does feel a little
agree
hole,
with
like there are
you
holes
that
in it.
Once I got back to the Martha part, I realized this is the story that she was telling the little girl about how the Doctor
It is
saved
a little,
something.
and
it was like,
She already set up.
Oh.
It's like they left out the setup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just like she launches into it and then it's there. But then, okay, if you're gonna raise hope, if you're going to tell the world about the Doctor, this is a terrible story to do with because everybody's already mutated into these things.
Yes,
and the
there's
guy
nothing
doesn't
that-
even make
all
it. I mean,
he does is realize it too late.
it's kind of like
Yeah.
an assisted
And he sends
suicide
him
story.
off.
I mean,
Yeah,
he
he sends
lives,
him off to
he
become
dies as a
what he
human,
is,
but he
yeah.
becomes an alien, and that's it. And then we rewire the beacon and move on.
And what's this little girl going to get out of this? Nothing.
Yeah, exactly. That's the problem I have.
This is what it comes down to. It feels
and
like these are four stories that they had sitting on a shelf somewhere, and they shoehorned them into this to make them work, and it doesn't
Now, I
work.
really
Part of me
liked
can
the
right
story.
away.
I loved the concept of it and everything, and I didn't even find the Doctor all that bad. Maybe it was just because it was populated with enough catchphrases.
There are enough catchphrases.
that I kind
That's
of
the
accepted
problem.
it as tenet.
Add catchphrases. That doesn't make him the Doctor.
Right, and I agree with that. Maybe there was just enough that my brain overrode it and allowed it to go as David Tennant. But I didn't think that it was all that bad compared to you guys. But compared to the Martha parts of it, I really thought the Martha parts were very lackluster because it's the same standard. There's an evil ruler on the planet.
Well, let's let him finish.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm
there's-
sorry.
because you're on something that I had a problem with as well. But I don't want.
But I haven't even finished it yet, so,
yeah,
yeah.
I don't want to overshadow.
I don't
what
either.
Keith's
Go
gonna
ahead and
talk
take it.
about, because
Okay, so we finish the story, which afterwards there's dialogue to assume that she set it up and makes it a good story about the Doctor despite the resolution.
right.
And then she continues on and ends up in this refugee camp and this auction, or not auction, but
They call it a flash market, I think is what they called it, right?
Basically a farmer's market where people can trade and get supplies they need. And she tips
But they're
off.
illegal.
It's illegal because it's the Master's reign.
Right.
And she tips off the guy, and almost everyone escapes, and she ends up back
This
at
is in
this.
France, right? Do I remember that right?
I'm trying
This
to
is when she
remember
meets
now.
up with Matthew.
Matthew.
I think this is France. That's okay. It's
I think
it's
it is French.
inconsequential.
I think she moved.
because she's moving across
She moves across Europe.
Europe
Yeah.
and then into Asia.
Yeah. So I'm assuming she's in France at this point. And then she ends up at.
Yeah, because his name's spelled Mathieu, which I think is the French spelling of Matthew. It's Mathieu.
Yeah, that's true.
Mathieu.
Really, this section for Martha is short.
It kind of is. It's
2 chapters.
All of the sections are short until you get to kind of the meat of it.
3 chapters, rather.
Yeah, until you get to kind of the meat of it.
The meat of it is short.
Yeah, meets the Drast. But anyway, keep going. I'm sorry. I keep interrupting. I will let you finish. Sorry.
She ends up with a resistance group, and this is when she kind of realizes, oh, there's more than me just fighting out there. And she really starts her quest. I mean, in the first part of the book and her story to Alicia, I can even write away the story she tells to the fact that she's not entirely sure what to do. She's not sure how to do this.
Well, she knows what she's doing, though. Sorry, go ahead.
Well,
she knows what she's doing. She knows what she's been
tasked to do.
It's
she
just
does
maybe
not the
she doesn't
best
know
way
how
to do it.
Yeah,
okay. She doesn't know the best way to do this.
All right.
And then we get to Breathing Space, which is her next story that she tells the resistance group.
And this one's a pretty decent story. This is the least bad of them, if you ask me. But
Breathing Space is okay. Breathing Space is
set in Earth's future.
And global warming and ozone has created such an environment that Earth cannot live much longer.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right.
And this alien species out of nowhere pops up and says, hey, we can help you. Let's send these giant balloon whales to clean up the oxygen. And the Doctor instantly realizes, which I thought the Doctor in this was much better written.
Yeah,
than
that's why I like this one, is because this one really feels like 10.
It feels more like Tenet.
Yeah. 10.
10. Tenet's as 10.
Yeah.
He realizes that, oh wait, this is a species that interferes with the planet and subterfuges and is an economy draining species in order to conquer the planet, which anything besides brute force I appreciate, which is why I, for the most part, decide to design appreciate the Selene, is because they're more than just I want to dominate.
Right, it's not global domination. There's a reason behind it.
Well, this is global domination, but there's a different way to dominate.
Right.
It's more than just force.
It's stealthy. It's before the Earthlings would realize it.
Yeah, but by the time Earthlings would realize it, it's too late. And so there's this long chase scene with Martha allowing the Doctor to get back to the TARDIS, and then him showing up and explaining what's actually happening. Which, overall, the story of this fell down for me a little bit. I liked ideas of it, but it was just far too simple, I think.
Well, the simplicity is what
it's hard to do.
That's why this
short stories of the Doctor.
But that's why this one works as a story within this story, because it's a quick, it's a good explanation of the heroism of the Doctor,
and it shows it explains why people should believe in the Doctor more than the first one.
Only one that does.
Yeah,
that. Yes, agreed.
Because he actually saves Earth in the future, and so 10 is fantastic in this story, I thought.
Yeah, this is
really well
like
written. And while some of the ideas I thought were a little heavy-handed of global warming and everything else, it's a group of scientists on a space station trying to figure out how to fix this, and then relying on this.
They're ready for the shortcut, the quick fix.
They want which. How much of that encapsulates humans?
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
We want the quick fix. Anything to make it easy.
Well, even if it's bad for us or could be dangerous, we're not going to look into why it could be dangerous.
I don't want to work out. I just want the pill.
Yeah,
exactly.
This is what this conveys. Yeah, absolutely.
So this story wasn't. I think it was one of the best of this book.
Of the short stories, yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. And then we continue on with Martha's story, which is, I think, fascinating.
I do love this part of the book.
3/4 of the book is fascinating.
It doesn't end up the way I wanted it to. But
this is the instance where it feels like there's a plot hole after the story. Martha eventually ends up on a helicopter.
Well, you get the impression that
there's a chapter before that where she leaves the group and she's like, okay, tell the story. She starts laying the groundwork of what she's supposed to do. Spread this story, tell others, make as many people aware as possible. And then she gets caught by the UCF, or what you think is the UCF.
Think is the UCF.
But
which, by the way, is the group that Griffin, you didn't mention this before,
the Griffin
works for.
The Griffin group.
This is
the
Masters.
The Masters Army.
Police force, basically.
Yeah. Well, I got more than police force. I got Army.
Gestapo.
Yeah, really. Gestapo.
Gestapo.
Yeah, that's a good word for it.
Governmental police, yeah.
And then we just suddenly jump to she's on this helicopter. I had to go back and reread.
I did the same thing.
And make sure I didn't miss something.
I thought it was so weird, and I just had to assume in my mind that she thought she was being captured by the UFC, and that it would end up being
and they later explain that it is a ruse.
Right. But it was so abrupt and sudden there. It was bizarre.
Yeah,
I agree.
It was really
totally
weird. If it would have explained initially, oh wait, I wasn't captured. That's a great place to pick up a chapter.
Right,
I mean, oh wait, no, this isn't who I thought it was. Okay, they're on my side. We're off traveling elsewhere. And then she gets contacted. The contact word, here, let's see if Shaun picks up on this, is Benton.
Ooh, yay!
The person she's supposed to contact is the Brigadier.
Yay!
And at this point, I'm going, ooh, yay!
Me too! I was sitting there in bed while Sarah was sleeping, trying not to get too excited so I didn't wake her up.
I was doing the same thing. I was like, oh!
Biggest miss opportunity ever.
I know.
Ever! This is my biggest complaint with this book.
You telling me the Brigadier's not in this?
It's
well,
not
there's a Brigadier.
It's
just
not
the one
Brigadier
we wanted.
Lethbridge Stewart. It's some other bloke
Epic fail.
who's...
Talks about his grandfather, which I kind of assumed maybe was.
It could have been,
Lethbridge,
or it could have just
they don't
been
give you
somebody
that.
in unit during that time
Well,
frame.
it's just that he's an ex-unit operative because unit has pretty much been
Wiped out because of...
decommissioned at this point.
Yeah.
And he's using, because he knows that Martha runs with the doctor, he uses Benton and he uses the title of the Brigadier because he thinks it's going to be a code thing for her, so she would cue in on it. Unfortunately, the doctor has never talked about the Brig or Benton or anything to Martha up to this point, so she has no
idea.
Point.
And he's hoping that she has insight that the doctor has told him.
Right.
Or told her. And obviously she doesn't because he hasn't mentioned any of that to her. So this whole section is a pit stop for no reason without bringing in Lethbridge Stewart.
Right. Agreed.
It's useless.
I so thought it was coming, and then it didn't.
It
Like Keith said, missed opportunity.
That's when the book started going downhill for me. When they tease you for at least a chapter that, oh, you're going to go meet the Brigadier. The key word is Benton. And it's not.
Yeah.
It is so disappointing. And
Eric Calvin, that was his name. That was the Brigadier's name.
And then it's a footnote in this story. She stops. She tells a story, but we don't get that story.
Right.
This is the first instance.
We don't get one there.
Where she tells a story where we don't get these stories.
It's almost like, oh, we don't have 5 stories? Okay, we'll just say she said a story here.
And then still later on, there's more instance of her telling
There's another one, yeah. Well, I can almost be more forgiving later because of the way it's done. Because
I just don't
because
like
of her exhaustion
later,
or because of the way they're setting it up. But anyway, I'll get ahead of us.
And then she miraculously gets to Japan. She just jumps to Japan, which she's still in Europe when she encounters fake Brigadier.
She's in Russia. Well, she's in
Russia.
She's in Germany, but they make it into the Russian provinces.
Yeah.
At that point,
Yeah.
that's why she ends up in Japan. Then, so.
And she ends up in Japan, where supposedly a lot of the guidance systems of what the Master is planning is being constructed. And she gets captured and gets put into a labor camp, a slave labor camp. and she's forced to do this. And she gets presented with an opportunity to tell a story first night, and she's so exhausted from soldering things, she doesn't. And
I liked that aspect.
I like that
the
aspect
fact that
too.
you feel like we're getting ready to do another story, and you realize now there's so
she's
much
too
of the weight
exhausted.
of what
She
she's
doesn't.
doing. Yeah.
She's
Now-
too run down for this.
The people who captured her, do they not know who she is?
Well,
Because they make it a big point early that
Here's the thing: the people in Japan, UFC, they kind of established that. Okay, here's this: she gets into Japan. Her manipulator isn't working. Her key doesn't work anymore. That's how she gets captured, and they don't recognize who she is. They don't care who she is. They kind of hints at something that comes later.
Okay. Just because they made such a big deal about this is Martha Jones, she runs with the doctor, we want her. I have a hard time believing that Joe Schmo caught her and then put her in a labor camp without getting.
That's the problem I had, and they hint at it, you know, that the fact that
isn't she on an APB sheet somewhere that would have been passed out to these security chiefs? She fully expects to get
recognized the entire time, and doesn't. But there's a reason for it coming up.
Okay.
And so then she eventually tells the next story, to a bunch of the other labor camp people. The first time she tells her neighbors in this labor camp and everybody else this story. Frozen Wastes by Robert Shearman.
Sherman.
Sherman?
It's spelled Shearman, but I think it's pronounced Sherman.
Okay, regardless. I was not a fan of this story. The doctor felt like the doctor in the story.
Yeah, I would agree.
Martha felt like Martha.
And then there's a point in the story where the doctor gets weird on me.
The problem I had
work.
with this story is, okay, it's this guy. Martha starts off with, when I used to dream about being a doctor. That led me to, when I was a kid, having the human anatomy on my wall instead of whatever boy band was popular, and studying the human anatomy. And then we jump to this other guy, this French guy, who dreamt of white all the time.
Pierre Breuer.
Yeah. Which, having just read Sacre Bleu by Christopher Moore, which dealt in France and...
With Pierre Breuer?
No, but... I almost thought they were going with a painter aspect to this.
Okay. Because he dreams of white.
Yeah, he dreams of white, yeah. So he dreams of white, and he eventually becomes this explorer of the Arctic.
Going to find the North Pole.
He's going to find the North Pole. And I love the doctor's reaction to all the promotional stuff of, well, there's no penguins on the North Pole. That's Antarctica, don't they know?
Well, because they're using clockwork penguins.
Yeah, they're using clockwork penguins, and it's a very funny bit.
In the Arctic. That's the Antarctic.
But the doctor ends up getting him and Martha on his balloon because every other version that's tried to go failed. So this guy thinks a balloon will lift them up and carry them.
Every other expedition has failed, and in fact, I love that moment where he's still young enough that he hasn't become an explorer yet, and he realizes,
and he's explaining to the council of whoever it is. They didn't really explain that. Of this isn't a permission.
Yeah,
I'm going regardless.
This isn't. I'm not asking you. I'm telling you. I'm going.
This is what I'm doing.
But early on, I like how every failed expedition is like a relief for him because he still gets to be the first one to discover it. So.
Hooray! They didn't make it.
Yeah.
And so they get up in this balloon and they start traveling, and they start losing altitude. So they start bailing out everything they can. And one of the things they bail out, which I thought was the stupidest thing they could have ever done,
is all of their food.
All of the food. And I'm like, oh, great. They're going to starve to death.
But we're still aloft.
And they keep traveling. And they get to a point where they start talking about their dreams. And
Martha realizes 8 weeks later.
Well, it's not even 8 weeks later.
Anymore.
It's like 2 days later. She's like, I should be starving. why am I not starving?
I think it was a week. I think
Maybe it was a week.
It was a lot longer.
It was longer than it should have been.
Live a few days with that.
And she's like, I'm not starving. Why aren't I starving? Oh, well. That's one issue I had with this story.
Coming from the doctor.
No, coming from Martha.
No, I don't have a
doctor.
problem with that based on what their situation. We find out their
Considering their situation, but going through it, you're like, Martha should be smarter than that. She should realize something.
She's also having the odd dreams, and Pierre's acting weird. I mean, there were enough elements
there's
around.
a lot
but I
of
was
weirdness going
That's why
on.
I kept thinking there's something going on here.
Yeah.
And that's why she can't realize it.
There's
I gave
a
her
lot
credit for wondering why she wasn't hungry. I gave her at least that much
There
credit.
is that, because Pierre didn't wonder at all.
No.
And so they continue, and they assume that they're above the North Pole. And then, I'm trying to remember now how they realize things aren't as they seem.
Well, the doctor finally
The doctor lets them in, that they're in this time bubble where it feels like it's been a year.
Well,
or something ridiculously
She
long.
says it's only been 8 weeks. No, I'm sorry. He says it's been 8 weeks, and Pierre says it's been 8 weeks. We've been traveling. The North Pole should be below us. And Martha says, no, you're daft. It's only been a few days. It's only been like 8 days. She says, it hasn't been that long. And he's like, no, it's been 8 weeks. I've been taking notes. I've been taking data down. I've been writing my diary.
And it turns out he started writing over his diary entries.
So there's this confusion between them. And when they turn to the doctor and say, well, how long has it been, doctor? And he says, years.
Yeah.
And no time at all.
And then he reveals that
what?
they're in this weird time bubble that they never fully explain, and this creature they never fully explain, and they haven't left since they threw the food overboard.
Yeah, can you look down over the side, and the provisions are still laying in the snow. Below.
And not even covered with snow.
Yeah.
And then
it gets
really weird.
Oh, what's even worse is then there's all these different balloons.
Yeah,
and they all have a Pierre.
There's alternate timelines of Pierre in this balloon with different crew, and him still in the same situation.
And then one of the Pierres he starts to communicate with, and it's really the creature that's using the other Pierre to talk to him. It gets real surreal and lost, and
it doesn't
bizarre.
clarify itself well enough. And then
they
end up.
The doctor, or the Martha ends up saving him in this.
Yeah, the Martha ends up saving him, which why not tell a story where the doctor saves him?
I did like this aspect of it, is because what this creature feeds on is the adventure of others, the dreams, the adventurism of Pierre,
which is why he's dreamt for White.
Because it drew him
for
in,
so long.
because he was like the ultimate adventure. He had to, this creature could really draw energy from him.
Which
unfortunately,
and they make
the
reference
doctor,
earlier on that he was lost in March whatever year, and this is currently June.
Yeah, exactly.
Of whatever year.
And the doctor unfortunately can't break this same thing because the doctor is also an explorer, an adventurer, and so this creature is actually sort of feeding off him as well. But Martha never dreamt of adventure. Martha dreamt of science and anatomy and wanted to be a doctor. And so she's the one that kind of breaks the connection. And that's why Martha ends up really being the one that saves him.
And then it ends.
See, that's a flaw with this book. That's a cool story to tell to build up Martha's character.
It's too short.
But it doesn't have anything to do with the story of the doctor that she's supposed to be threading.
Yeah.
It's the story of Martha.
That's the problem.
The only thing that you can lend to this is the doctor's the one that figures this out.
Very early on.
Really, it's Martha that breaks the connection, but the doctor's the one that figures it out. The problem I had with this story, the biggest problem I had with this story, is the fact that the doctor is working it out so they can get on board and be the traveling companions with Pierre, and just before they're ready to take off, he lets Martha in on the fact that, Pierre never made it to the North Pole as they're leaving. And I thought, well, that's very doctor-like, but gosh, if I was Martha, I'd think,
I don't want to go on this trip.
You are bringing the TARDIS with you, aren't you? Because there's no TARDIS mentioned in this, yeah. And so I'm thinking, Boy, at this point, knowing the Doctor, the year that she knows him, or whatever times,
even if
she
not
knows
even
him,
a year,
the one
just
season of the show that she knows him, am I going to go? Wait, are you insane? Are you taking us off to our death? You know, I mean, you'd like to think that the Doctor and Martha by this point had a little better of a relationship, that she would have enough trust in him to know that something's going on here. But
well, and then Martha breaks it, and things go back to normal.
well, things are reset.
Reset completely
for Pierre.
Where Pierre is a baker.
He grows up and ends up being a baker.
Which is
Lord.
another serendipity moment for me, because the main character in Sacre Bleu is a baker. So that's where I drew even more parallels. And then, randomly, he starts dreaming of white again.
Yeah.
After being like 27 years old and having normal dreams as a child, he suddenly begins dreaming of white.
That was weird.
It's just
because
not
They
necessary.
weren't getting the whole confectionery thing because he keeps dumping more and more
Well, yeah.
powder on it, which was kind of a clever illusion there. But it just.
But obviously, whatever just happened didn't matter because it didn't solve the issue.
Exactly. That's what I kind of.
That's the problem with this story.
I got out of that as well. But
however,
whatever.
I thought the Doctor was well written in this story.
Not as well as last. But
it felt like tins still.
Okay, I'll give you that.
Whereas the first and the last did not.
Yeah.
Okay, so Martha's in Japan and in this labor camp, and lo and behold, Griffin also got captured and is a part of this labor camp. And the UFC in this sector doesn't care because they're working for somebody else.
Well, you should say the factories that they're working in.
The factories they're working
don't acknowledge UFC here.
Yeah.
Because they kind of have their own.
Despite the uniform that everyone's wearing.
Right. They kind
They
of
don't recognize UFC.
Any UFC that comes in
doesn't matter. They're free reign for.
Yeah. Right.
And Griffin tells her this story of, I tried to get my higher ups to get me in, and they couldn't, and I just came in anyways, and I got captured, and I got put in these labor camps. And we discover that Japan is not being run by the Master. It's being run by an alien race.
The draft.
The draft.
Or draft.
The
Just
draft.
a draft, yeah.
The draft.
Yeah.
Which also...
Drast. I knew that didn't sound right.
The drast.
Even draft sounds like a wind, like a draft of wind. But drast.
Which
drast.
also come in and take over a planet via economy.
And stealth. They
stealth.
come in slowly.
And they've been here for years, establishing this new world for them when the Master came in and surprised them.
Yeah.
And it takes...
So they were already here. The Master comes along, kind of thwarts their plans of domination.
And so
it takes a whole left turn at this point.
Martha
and you've got this look on your face like, what? Yeah. This is where what's the author's name? Abnett.
Abnett, yeah.
That's
Dan
Abnett. I think that this story of Martha really isn't going anywhere. Let's really put something in there. Twist it.
Which
with a twist.
And I found this interesting. Oh, look, there's this whole alien species on Earth that we didn't know about, trying to manipulate things slowly, and then the Master just comes in and boop! Nope, I'm in charge. And then Martha tells another story about the Doctor to this people she got sent with or who volunteered to go with her to this other site that was a rumor. And it was assumed that they get out afterwards.
Right.
They get their freedom. When in actuality,
the promise is
there's
get your
this
freedom if you go
rip
work at this
in
other place.
time and space that they're sending people through, and if they come back, oh great, we found our home planet. If not,
The Drast.
we try again.
The Drast are trying to figure out a way to get off Earth. Now the Master's kind of taking over everything. They realize that their plans aren't going to work.
They can't take a space a saucer and leave because the Master will shoot
So
them.
they think they figured out a way out, but they not sure. They're trying to build basically a transport through this rip
Yeah.
in time and space in order to get home.
And so they've sent like 100 people through this, all of them failing, and then resetting the coordinates.
Right. So they just continue to like use humans as a guinea pig to travel through this.
Can I have my bookmark?
No,
You're
you
going to
must
take it
finish
out.
it.
You're not going to finish.
You
are
must finish it.
Really?
Wait.
You're not giving me a whole lot of confidence to go on here.
Keep going.
And then she tells the group of people she's with another story. This is our last story. This is the one that should rally the troops and really save the day.
At least the doctor figures this one out and fixes things.
But it's not the doctor in this story.
No.
It's some comic. It's
Some over-the-top comedic doctor that just feels silly and...
So Martha and this one is another one where they show up. She starts a story midstream, where she's getting captured by these people, and there's these other people that are trying to attack, and the doctor does some weird illusionist.
This was my favorite part of the
jiu-jitsu.
whole story.
This is the problem I had. This is the story. This is the part I had most problems with, is because it felt so comical for Ten to do that it felt so out of place. And he's never done anything like this.
You're right, but it works later. It works later, and there's a reason why he doesn't use it.
But he does this weird trick of replacing weapons and switching
He's
everything
getting ready
out.
to be attacked by one weapon, and what he does is he, by sleight of hand, switches it with somebody else's weapon, so that then they're like perplexed because now they've suddenly got a different weapon, and the guy that
It feels so out of
the
character
next
for
guy that
any
probably
doctor.
would have attacked now has the other guy's weapon, and so they're all confused. It's just a confusion. It's a 3-card Monty with and fighting. They give it away at the end of what it's called. It's called Emptorian Jiu-Jitsu. It's not Venusian. It's Emptorian Jiu-Jitsu.
Which it felt so comical for any doctor, regardless.
It was weird there. I promise. It was bizarre. It was something the Fourth Doctor would do. It was totally in the Fourth Doctor's.
I didn't even think that.
Yeah,
but I haven't seen as much
Doctor
for issue.
as written by Douglas Adams.
It was totally something the Fourth Doctor would
Have
do.
a jelly baby. It's a grenade.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, as it turns out, they're on this colonization ship, where humans have been sent out to colonize other planets, and something's gone wrong. And they've got these
Gangers.
artificials.
That's
Essentially,
what they call them.
They call them artificials. Essentially, gangers that do ship maintenance. Everyone else is in cryo sleep, except
These artificial humans are created in order to
humans
wake up and every once in a while clean house, fix a ship, do things on the ship,
do maintenance.
while the humans sleep.
But something goes wrong, and the humans wake up mid-flight. And the ship is solar-powered, and there's no sun nearby. So they're fighting for control of the ship, while they're not even worrying about the fact that they're not even going to reach their destination by the time these humans' lives end.
There's a big revolution that happens between the artificials and the humans.
They start fighting between
because
the two of them.
Artificials start to realize that they have self-realization, the fact that they're, hey, why are we the slaves? Why are we the ones?
It's kind of like the clones in Star Wars. Yeah. They get names.
Basically, after they're
people.
done doing their tasks, they get dissolved down and become a new batch of artificials.
Yeah,
and they get reused with no memories, no nothing. And so they think, well, why do we have to be that way?
And so they start fighting between the two of them. And the big reveal, thanks to the Doctor, which, aside from, what's it called? The ninjutsu?
Oh, Antorian Jiu-Jitsu.
I felt, for the most part, like the Doctor. He stumbles across the navigation computer, finds out what really happened, and it turns out that there was this huge cataclysm, and all the humans were lost.
All of them are dead. All of the humans are dead.
Everyone. But the artificials were able to take some of the intelligence and the personalities and put them in artificial bodies, which I assume changed the look of them also.
Well,
and so the
I get
artificial
the
are
impression
fighting
because they're
artificials.
cryogenic terms, and they were almost essentially
Well,
cloning.
they had
were
the DNA.
They cloned the humans. Actually, is what they did. But they were
But
as much artificial as they were.
But all the artificials had the same face,
Right,
whereas
exactly.
the humans
had
didn't.
different.
Gotcha.
And so they
Okay.
took the DNA and the brain.
Ultimately, you find out that they're all artificial.
Yeah, that's
really.
that sounds like kind of a
It was
clever
neat.
story.
It was a neat.
It was
neat
it was a
idea.
very clever story. I just had issues with.
There's problems with the story. There's not problems. It's just not a great fantastic story up to the realization. The realization then makes it a good. The premonition makes it a really good story at that point because you're like, oh, neat. These guys they were fighting each other, but really they're all artificials. So,
Which I appreciated that aspect. And for the most part, in this story, the Doctor was the Doctor.
he felt like 10. Yeah, I'll give him that.
And so, and that's pretty much the end. Is he reveals to them that everyone's artificial. Everyone should be holding hands and singing "Kumbaya," and everyone does.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Well, the end is him and Martha going back to the TARDIS, and Martha asking him, "What was that thing you did there with switching the weapons and stuff?" And that's when he reveals to her it's
what
called
it was.
Amtorian Jiu-Jitsu. He said, "I started studying it because I really thought the was an amber belt was really kind of a nice looking was a nice thing to get." And then he says,
I was almost to that point.
I was almost to that point, and then I realized that what happens is when you get to that point where you're going to get the belt, then there's one final challenge, and that's where the masters come and they attack you, and you don't know when they're going to come. They just come out of nowhere, and you never know where, when, or how it's going to happen. And he says, so I decided that probably, maybe I didn't want to do that, and so I never finished it up. But unfortunately, he had just done it again. And so then as they're walking to the TARDIS, he goes, wait a minute.
Did you hear something?
Did I hear something? And she's like, I don't think so. And he's like, I don't know. And he goes in kind of apprehensively. And that's where they ended. So you're thinking now he's like, uh-oh, I just initiated the final challenge.
Which I like that.
That was a wonderful moment.
That was
Somewhere
great.
in a dojo, there's a red light. What's that? That blowing dust off the file.
The doctor's
ready.
for his final challenge.
Somebody called Kato.
That's what it made me think of, was like Kato in the Pink Panther cartoons attacking Clouseau as he walks into the apartment. All right, go on. We got to finish this up.
That's the end of the stories. And overall, I thought the stories of the Doctor didn't fully encapsulate the Doctor. They didn't do a good job of inspiring people to all chant the Doctor's name.
Yeah, they're so out of place.
Okay, and then the end. Okay, so
Which doesn't feel like a full year. Like
it's not.
You could have
no,
gone on.
They make reference to it's only been 6 months.
Yeah, it's only half a year. It's like we could have done another
This
story.
book is literally only half of the year.
But you know what? You couldn't have done it because it ends with her landing on the shore and meeting Tom.
No, that could be added to the end. That's just them. Okay, we got to end this book. Bam, we'll put the beginning on the end.
Right, 250 pages.
because
and
they
then
start
stop.
to be-
Because the end of the story
Well, the prologue
doesn't
is
end.
the end, but yeah, no, it does. They reiterate it
No,
again. It's
she
in
does-
the epilogue.
but
Yes,
It's
it
in
is.
the epilogue, but the end of the story ends with her leaving Japan. Okay.
Well,
you
the end
remember
of the story
in-
ends up the master realizes
Yeah.
is apprised of what's going
The master
on.
finds out about the
Drast
and
firebombs Japan.
nukes Japan, which all the references in The Last of the Time Lords, I saw Japan burn.
Yeah.
That's what all of this was leading up
Yep.
to.
Pretty
Okay.
much.
But
Now that's cool.
It was a payoff, but
she still walks America. There is still half the world she hasn't
and
walked.
that's not in the
They
book.
they skip all of that. She's on a boat off of Japan when the book ends, and Griffin ends up. And it's implied that he perishes in Japan.
Yeah.
But she's on a boat out of Japan because it's the Drask's technology and everything that's keeping them concealed from the master that stops Martha's perception filter from working.
When she gets away, her
So since she gets
perception
away from
filter
Japan, it
goes.
Yeah.
starts working again. Okay.
Once they
firebomb
They
the
well,
country.
even before that, they stopped.
Oh, that's right.
They stopped the Drask from completing because Griffin runs in and shoots a bunch of stuff and shoots the thing that causes the perception and everything. And so Martha escapes. Griffin dies.
It's bad.
The entire
Griffin didn't die until he goes back to.
that's true.
Yeah, he goes back to the HMC. Was it HMC?
AFC
aircraft.
headquarters, and then his guild.
No. What's the name of the
HMS Valiant.
HMS Valiant.
Yeah.
He's brought
Her
up to the
Majesty's
Valiant.
Service.
Yeah, he's brought up to the Valiant.
But the entire group she brought to that factory is killed. She escapes on a boat, and her perception filter is working because Griffin shot all this stuff up and causes the attention to the master.
I guess I read that differently. I got the impression that he threatened to blow it all up, and Martha went along with it and said,
You're right.
You know, you have no choice.
They
You've
had
got
to
let
shut
us
down
go."
the rip.
Right. So she said, you need to shut it down. So they shut it down, but there's still everything in place. It wasn't until the master firebombs the place and pretty much kills everybody that her perception filter, because then all that technology that was shielding them is destroyed.
Okay.
So that the Troclophane could come in there and do whatever they needed to do.
Now, that was something I thought was a little... I didn't look it up. It's Troclophane, right?
Troclophane, I believe so. Yeah.
Because there's no R on the back of that book, and every time he mentions...
Maybe it is Toclophane.
It's Toclophane.
It's Toclophane.
I thought
Maybe you're right.
We say Troclophane.
I thought it was
Toclophane.
Troc. Are we just adding
I
R's
think
to
we're
adding
like
R.
Daleks.
It's Toclophane.
It's Toclophane.
You're right. Okay, she's on a boat, and she's leaving Japan. That's where it ends. It's 6 months of this story.
There. It goes to It cuts to the master, angry because of that. He firebombs the planet. He kills Griffin, and then in that same chapter, I guess the Toclophane killed Griffin. In that same chapter is right at the end. It says it felt as though the world was night.
That's the epilogue.
No, it is not.
Because that's the same as the beginning.
It is not the epilogue. It is in this. You're right.
It's the same as the beginning. It's still half the story.
But here's what my point is if they had made that the epilogue, I could say, yeah, you could do a story of Martha too. But by putting
they could still do a story.
By putting it at the end of the chapter, you can't. That's
having
the point.
rewatched The Last of the Time Lords and The Sound of Drums. It's the beginning of The Last of the Time Lords.
It is the beginning. This passage is the beginning.
It's not the end of the book.
Listen to me. Listen. All I'm saying is that because they concluded it in the same chapter, it really messes up doing a second book. You're right. This is the beginning.
They just forgot the font.
End of the time, or Last of the Time Lords.
The beginning doesn't have a prologue. It just starts.
No, it starts in a prologue and
it
becomes
doesn't say prologue.
It doesn't say title.
Look, 1 year later, chapter 1. That's a prologue.
Where's 6 months later? They reference in this chapter.
That's my point. It doesn't matter.
6 months.
It doesn't matter that they have to say it. The only reason they had to say it is because they started the book at the end. That's the only reason they have to say 1 year earlier.
That's
they don't
why
have
it
to
feels
jump ahead.
shoehorned.
That's
this
the
shouldn't
point.
be here.
I'm not arguing with you against that.
It's not the end of the book.
What I'm saying is they can't and won't go back and do a story of Martha 2.
They're stupid.
Because of the fact that they included this passage in the end of the book.
Hold on.
They concluded this. They added this in the end of the book because, we haven't written a full year. Let's jump forward.
That's what they did. Absolutely.
It's wrong.
We're arguing the same things. But what I'm saying is they can't go back and do it because they screwed it up by
based on all of your
chapter.
Based on all of your comments, though, would you guys want them to do a story of Martha 2?
Yes.
Based on all of
I
your
want the
comments,
rest of the story.
Story of Martha 2.
No, I don't want it.
It's half the book. I want the
They,
rest.
they screwed up the first half of this year. I don't want them to screw up the rest of it. Let's leave it a mystery. What do we got coming up?
I think the Drask
would
have been a great midpoint to the story. I didn't have a problem with the Drask thinking, this is the Drask. Drast. That this is a half the story. Who knows what she encounters the rest of the year.
The Drask story is good. The problem is because it's in between. This is my opinion. In between the stories, it's rushed.
It feels like a climax to a book that's half finished.
No, it's he's getting real vehement now. But
I'm pissed at this book.
It's not.
They promised me the story of Martha. They gave me half the story of Martha.
Calm down, Keith. Calm down.
I'm going to take the book away from you.
It's half the story of
I'm
Martha.
going to put it in the freezer.
The problem,
so that
the
it'll be
problem
away.
with the Drast is it should have been a big climactic ending, and then they should have not even.
It shouldn't have happened in Japan.
It should have been a big cliffhanger ending.
Yes.
Then they should have started the next one with the resolution of the Drast and went on and built another story in the United States.
I think the epilogue, as we call it, was a footnote of, oh well, wait, we're not going to do the second half of this. We got
that's just
put that
all
in.
they had to do was go to the next page, write epilogue, and write that passage outside of that chapter.
But because
and it was
it's
open wide.
But
to
because
do it.
it's a different page, and it's the same as the beginning, I automatically assume it's the epilogue.
It is not a different page. In the
book
it
page.
is. In the
All
book,
right.
it most
Well, then
certainly
the
is. You're
digital-
looking at a digital
yeah, the
copy.
digital
Your
copy
digital copy is messed up.
I will buy that's an epilogue. Then I will give you.
So there's still half a book that needs to be written and needs to be published.
No, it doesn't, because I don't. I'm with Shaun. Based on what Shaun said, this book was not enjoyable. I had lots of issues with it, and if they did the same thing where they write a second book and then they have 4 stories sitting on a shelf somewhere that they need a way to put them together and make the second half of this. No, don't do it again.
And that
Don't
goes back
screw
to
it
my
up
point
again.
of it would have been much more enjoyable without the Doctor stories in it. Just the story of Martha walking the earth.
The problem is there's not enough substance there.
I thought there was.
There's not.
Of her.
There's not enough substance there.
It became a guerrilla warfare story of her evading, her
Unfortunately,
constantly avoiding this capture.
The only exciting things that happen are her evading with the little girl, which is resolved too quickly because it's short. It just happens too quickly.
That's because they feel they need to fit the story.
No,
in.
that's not a story. That's a
my
moment.
Point. That's a moment.
You can't build a whole story around evading with this girl.
She saves all of the people in the flash market by just basically telling them what's going to happen, and they run and they get away. That's just a moment. That's not a happening. It doesn't work. It's not a climactic.
That's a good point.
Now, here's what I want to happen. Based on what you're saying, had they gone back and they not put the stories in there and just said she was telling stories and left them ambiguous and built better on the story of Martha and made those moments more than just moments, then yeah, it would have been a fantastic book. It's not. It sucks. It sucks because of that.
It sucks because it's half a book.
No, it doesn't.
I'm
suck.
left at the half point.
Here's the problem, though, Keith. If you write another book, you're going to fall into the same trappings as this book.
I don't think you would have
What
to.
they needed to do,
if you learn from your mistakes
Keith,
from
what
this
they
book,
needed to do from the very beginning is they needed to write both books together and make it more of a moment. Make it less of moments and more of story of its own story. Make the story of Martha be her walking the earth, telling stories, but you have to tell me what the stories are.
That I think is the key.
Which, and
if
that's
you're
what
going
I
to do the story
enjoyed,
of
the story
Martha,
of her walking.
If you're going to do the story of Martha,
But
give me the
lackluster.
story
That's the
of
problem.
Martha. Give me one full book that tells the full year and everything that Martha ran into. Now, I still disagree. Based on what I've read, I wasn't that excited about the story of Martha. But if you're going to do it that way, do it that way. If you're going to put together a collection of short stories, call it a side trips, which is what they've done in the past. The side trips and short hops or whatever it was called.
Or publish it separately and say, these are the stories that Martha told.
Yeah.
That kind of thing would be fine with it.
But again,
one book could be called The Story of Martha, and the other book could be called The Stories Martha Told.
or even...
And it's just short story collection.
But again,
Even
that's
if
the
they-
number
even
one
if they
complaint you
combined
guys
the
have
two.
had with these short stories is that why did she tell that story? That's not a heroic story of the Doctor.
Well,
Just
yeah.
do a collection
Then-
of short stories.
And then they
period.
need to be better stories.
Yeah,
Well, I think if they would have been better stories and if they would
Or
have finished
fit.
the years, it would have been a better story.
Again,
That's my biggest complaint is that they
I'm
didn't
with
finish
Shaun,
the
though.
year.
The bridging between the stories that they're trying to fill in the gap here is lackluster. There's not enough going on there to make it exciting, make it any good.
So
I'm sorry.
That little
I-
ding
I-
is that little ding is Who News, and it's telling us that we've gone 3 hours. So we're going to wrap up now, guys.
So we've got one. The Crooked World is a definite recommend.
Oh, definitely recommend. Yeah.
And I'm going to say Only Human is a quasi recommend.
Pick it up if you're not busy.
If you're not busy, if you don't have anything else going on, you're not reading the next Stephen King opus, or just really, really, really like Doctor Who. Yeah, absolutely.
If you want more Ninth Doctor,
or if you want more Ninth Doctor, read it.
Yeah, because there's only 6 novels. It's Ninth Doctor novels as well.
And then Keith's going to give us a.
if you want half a story, pick it up.
So not so much there. All right,
Don't
coming up.
bother because they won't make another one.
Some changes to the Vortex schedule quickly.
Unfortunately. Sorry, Holly.
Yeah, we're going to have to bump a few things. So if
You and I are way ahead.
if you haven't seen the website, which it's still changed, I'll get an update on there hopefully tomorrow. For Friday Night Who this coming week, we're going to jump back to William Hartnell. We're going to do the Keys of Marinus. For the show next week, we're going to review Keys of Marinus and Big Finish Audio Adventure number 2 in the main line, Phantasmagoria. And then next week, we're going to do City of Death for Friday Night Who with Tom Baker, and then we'll go ahead and do a whole episode on City of Death, and we will postpone the Shada discussion until later once it's actually available in North America.
We've found out that it's not released until the 26th in the U.S., and these guys haven't read it. I was able to get a digital copy, apparently, when it officially released in the United States. Because I didn't get it nefariously. I got an actual copy, but...
You did not get it nefariously.
Not get it nefariously. I got an actual copy, but I'm not sure why the digital copy was available before the hard print. But anyway, so there you go.
There's that, and then I will get something updated on the schedule because we're going to have to shuffle a few things around to fit Shada in. Right. I want to give us an extra week to read it still.
Right,
but the good news is for us,
to read it.
And for you, if you're following along at home, because we want to do a complete Shada experience, we're going to talk about the book. We're going to talk about the VHS copy of the reconstruction that was put together with Tom Baker's help. We want to talk about the Flash animated story, which is also the Big Finish.
Also the Big Finish audio.
Eighth Doctor version of it. So you can start working on all of that now and know that it's coming up shortly. If you really want to start piecemealing your Shada together.
It's going to be a big show, and there's going to be a lot to do ahead of time, so make sure you get that done if you're following along with us.
Right. But other than that, homework for next week is Phantasmagoria. So
because none of that Shada stuff will be Friday Night Who. So
that's true as well. We won't be doing any of that as a group.
All right. Well, we've gone a little long-winded this week. We apologize, but
hopefully you had a long journey commute. We're the podcast for commutes.
That's going to do it for us this week. Until next week, I'm Glenn.
I'm Shaun.
I'm Keith.
Cheers.
Good night, everyone.
Be seeing you.
You're still depressed.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.